Man, Rio, I'm so glad that you're here with us. It was getting weirdly partisan for a moment, so you need to come in and shake that up.
Yeah, don't worry. I have more than enough to balance you guys.
That's really, it's all about living a balanced lifestyle and making sure that you have a Rio in your life.
It's the truth. We are here in the Wine Cave. You guys just let me know whenever you're ready to start your recording for the podcast. I'm also recording on my end, and hopefully I'll be able to get that up and running. If you need any of this starting audio, I can get it to you.
I recorded our little preamble discussion.
Oh, good. Yeah, it could be an Easter egg.
Yes.
Egg. Indeed. All right. So I'll stop that. We're probably ready to rock and roll.
Yeah.
Dylan says there's no sound issues. Thank you for that, Dylan. Let's do this thing. All right, welcome to the Moving Forward podcast / Dividend Report crossover episode that we affectionately like to call the Wine Cave because that's inherently funny. My name is Corey Cottrell. We got my good buddy Rio Verdenier.
Hey guys,
and of course Seth Underwood, the sexiest voice on YouTube.
Hello there. Thank you for having me.
Right. Show's over. We now know that's just the truth. So we wanted to come in and do a post-debate discussion. And solidly one of us has watched the debate. So that's good.
That's me.
Yeah, exactly. And one of us has watched half the debate and the other one is me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just didn't feel like it, to be honest. Just if we're being honest, I was telling Seth before you got on, Rio, I cannot wait for the voting to start. I'm getting very anxious for that to be the case because I think it's going to provide opportunity to sort of avoid all the media narratives and who's really voting for who. Let's get to town on this. I hope that's the case. Anyway, we're going to see if that what happens. And after you've seen these debates, how many times do you have to just watch people say the same shit, sling the same shit before you're like, all right, do something interesting.
I just want to point out how cool the difference between you and Rio are. I got into the Twitter today and I was like, okay, I'm pumped up. I'm ready to go. I might not have watched all of it, but I'm ready. And Rio's like, I've taken a lot of notes. I think we're gonna have a really good discussion right now. And Corey's like, I didn't fucking watch it. I'm not interested.
Who's Steyer? What is that? What is
but anyway, Corey, thank you. It's really in the American tradition to come on here and share your uninformed opinion with us.
That's exactly it. I'm waiting for someone to provide me the intel. That's you, and then I will make.
Americans may not know shit, but we are very opinionated.
Well, so I get to be. That's the thing. I'm still technically an expat, so this is I'm a Canadian training to be an American. And so
you have an excuse a lot of us don't have then, so we'll give you that.
I guess.
Yeah, you can't even vote, but you dedicate hours and hours and hours every week to political punditry. It's remarkable.
Well, I've noticed that there is a huge amount of foreign interest in Yang. A lot of people are looking at Yang and they're like, we need America to lead where they have not been leading for the past 30 years because this guy's saying stuff that I want to be in my country.
I bring this up a lot on the Moving Forward podcast and #coffee. The Radio Lab episode about tweaking the vote or fixing the vote, where they ultimately bring up ranked choice voting and a couple other things. The first 15 minutes is all about the rise of authoritarianism, and at core, it is because of the lack of trust in government structures the world over. And running through all the policies the way that we're doing on the Moving Forward podcast, in almost every episode, the discussion invariably ends up, just imagine how much policy X, whether it's the freedom dividend or democracy bucks or whatever it is, will lead to that sense of raising that level of trust, because that really is the cure for this descent into authoritarianism that we're seeing, right? And that's global. That's just here. It's happening everywhere, right?
Right, and the fact that it's global suggests that Trump isn't the cause of it; he's a symptom of it, like Yang keeps saying.
Right. Yep.
In the United States, the cause of it is the voters. I mean, I know we like to beat around the bush, but
no, I mean that's
responsibility starts with looking in the mirror, folks.
Okay, but the voters are acting by
horseshit.
Well, the voters are acting from a stimulus. There is something that is egging the voters on to act the way that they are acting. So what are the
Are
forces
we gonna
behind
have a
that?
debate about free will here? Do we need to get Sam Harris on?
No, it's
I love
yeah.
it. Yeah, let's do it.
yeah. Bring Sam Harris on. I have a few things to discuss
The
with him.
poor voters can't help it. They're just these robots who are just doing what
No, that
the
definitely
forces tell
isn't the
them to do.
case. But it's amazing how much you want to just give the system a pass when the only thing that we can truly have an effect on is the system itself.
We can't have
Period.
an effect. We can't have an effect on our own behavior.
Individually, we can.
Yeah.
But the population of the United States, sadly, are not required by law to listen to this podcast, although they should be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm normally against authoritarian measures, but I support that.
I was gonna say. I was wondering where you would take that particular authoritarian impulse that I just had. But yeah,
I
no,
mean, that's the problem with authoritarianism, though, right? Like all of us,
right,
for our own advantage, given that kind of power.
So what we know about, and this is actually a global situation, the main thing that is leading to a lack of trust is the disconnection between policy desires and policy outcomes, right? Yeah. So, voters having this very, I think, understandable feeling that the thoughts and feelings and directions they're having towards the people that they're trying to get elected into office in these systems that are dominated by money, right? It's actually not the voters, it's the rich people.
Oh, good Lord.
Dude, Rio, argue all you want. Here's the vector.
I mean, I'm just saying, look at the statistics on how people by education level and income actually voted, and it was working class white people who elected Donald Trump. I mean, that's just
no, but why? Why?
So
40 years of income inequality, and rich people creating not only tax situations but legal and trade situations where it is literally, whether it's it was offshoring for 20 years, it's not really anymore, but you still get massive tax breaks for automating the fuck out of your factory, right? So, and I'm not saying that corporations or rich people were evil. They're just being self-interested. The system itself is broken.
It's self-perpetuating. Yeah,
right.
it's
and people are desperate to try and figure out how to make their suffering heard, by people that don't give a fuck about their suffering at all. Right? If you're in some giant corporation, you're legally obliged to make that corporation the most money humanly possible. That's by law, right? You're not really worried about the fact that you just sold off all of the retirement plan for the entire corporation because you don't give a fuck. You're still going to get your bonus at the end of the year.
So,
I mean, lots of corporations do things that are unscrupulous all the time. The government lets them get away with it too much.
Right. That's exactly what I'm saying.
I'm just saying that I guess like I'm trying to move the pendulum back to the other extreme in this discourse because I see everybody on the left and even the so-called right, which is not right-wing anymore, all trying to blame elites and the government, and literally nobody is saying, hey, maybe regular people have some personal responsibility, not only in politics, but also in our economy. And I think that's ridiculous.
So I agree with both of you here, as I sometimes do. But the thing that I'm going to come in with here, I'm going to wrap this quickly into the debate just a little bit, because we shouldn't talk about the debate too much in the wine cave, or else we'll be in trouble. Especially this debate, which was horrendous, a dumpster fire. But one of the things that I was super interested in was when they started talking about trade. A lot of the stuff Corey just brought up when he was talking about, these are some things that we need to be pointing out. Bernie went on a super long tirade against poor trade agreements that have been affecting us. And this is one of the weird areas where Bernie and Trump kind of like fall in line together, is trade has been screwing over the American people for quite some time. And what frustrated me the most is, and like Scott Santens just brought this up on Twitter, he was like, whoever you have going against Trump needs to be able to stand there on the debate stage and say, Trump brought up a lot of good reasons as to why people voted the way they did, but it's not immigrants and it's not trade that is primarily causing these problems. It's automation. It is the evolving workforce, and the fourth industrial revolution is creating problems that we can't fix with the solutions of 30, 40 years ago.
Bernie Sanders could totally carry that tune, right?
But this is the weird thing.
I was kidding.
Oh, thank you so much. No,
that was a joke.
Right.
Let's make that super clear.
there's such a schism in my understanding of what's going on here, because Bernie is super like, oh, we need to be protecting jobs, we need to be protecting workers, to the
Right.
point that he's like willing to try and fight these trade agreements. Like, for me, the end result of globalization and global trade is the exact same end result as automation. It's going to sound very evil-hearted for me to talk about outsourced immigrants or outsourced workers as essentially robots, but that's kind of what they are. They're willing to work for subhuman pay, and that's, you could be on the right and say, oh, well, that's actually opportunity, and that pay is going a lot further for them than it would if it wasn't there. That's a different debate.
As a matter of fact, income inequality globally is the lowest it's ever been.
Steven Pinker, here we go.
And that's right. I was actually just talking to a really good friend of mine, Arathi, who was doing a lot of tech work, and effectively she felt super guilty about moving them back to her hometown in India. She's from here, but her family's from India, and that exact thing came up, right? Like she was talking to her dad about it. It's like, I feel a lot of guilt about this. Like, what am I doing? And she said, well, just imagine that you're going to be bringing on 1,000 to 5,000 people, and to you it looks like exploitative wages, but to them it's the most money anyone in their town will ever make.
Yeah.
Right? Like that, like it really is that much of a differential. So globally, we can't really stop it, I don't think.
We don't have to go into a foreign mindset in order to understand the economics there, right? Within the United States, we have wildly different costs of living, right? In the middle of the country, we have people who can live on, it still admittedly costs more than living in China, right?
Right.
But much less than living in Hong Kong, and way less than living in the Bay Area, right? Or Manhattan. So there is just a reality that some places cost more to live than others. And a lot of the places that actually have good high-paying jobs in the United States are extremely high cost of living, which is why you have a lot of people who are multimillionaires who really just basically, if you actually look at their quality of life, are basically just middle class. In San Francisco, you could be middle class or you could be lower middle class and be a multimillionaire. I'm not kidding.
Yeah, and again here, I'm sympathetic to both points.
Well, and Yang is always, and Yang, I mean, in his War on Normal People, he specifically points that out. He says, like, there are these hollowed out towns where there's no upward mobility whatsoever. Other than Sanders' federal jobs guarantee, which is a terrible idea, we've talked about it before, I'm sure we'll get into it again, really nobody other than Yang has anything that's going to help people in all of those hollowed out towns at all. And Yang's is just far superior than the federal jobs guarantee.
Absolutely.
And not just because it's a better policy in general, but also because it'll actually help those people more too, right?
And this is also part of the reason why I really I wish we could put some kind of like focus on automation and say, well, let's not view automation as a bad thing. Let's view automation as like the key to unlocking human potential. Because like Corey said, there's no stopping what's happened right now. You could try and make some kind of point to say, well, perhaps these really poor people who are being exploited in a micro setting, like macroeconomically, you could say the global poverty is dropping significantly. The people are better off for globalization. But sure, there are probably some specific places where people are being exploited and they would have been living better lives in the communities that existed before we exported our culture to them. But I don't think, again, it's a gray area. It's not one way or the other.
I don't know. I mean, I think it's actually a fairly clean narrative. I think that the people who are getting left behind are the people who used to be middle class in the poorer parts of the first world.
Right.
Like kind of across the board, right? And those are the people who need the help. And our means-tested welfare system that puts the burden of helping the truly destitute on the middle class instead of on the rich is only making that situation worse, right? I remember I was really quickly before we talk more about income, I wanted to say something about, you said Bernie Sanders and Trump are similar. This is one of those weird areas where they're similar. They're similar in a lot of ways, like a lot of ways. Bernie Sanders is a populist. Trump is a populist. Trump is a national socialist. Bernie Sanders is a democratic socialist. Trump is alt-right, which is pretty damn Marxist in the sense that they have a zero-sum worldview and they think that all exchange is about winners and losers. And the only place they disagree about is which side they take in the oppression Olympics, but they both fully believe in it. They don't believe in a pluralistic society with mutually beneficial exchange, which is what the left and the right in the proper Overton window used to believe in.
Yeah. Zero sum. You're right. You're exactly right. That's the tying part together, is that they both view it as a zero sum world.
Which is probably why they don't like UBI. But I remember I was listening to Sanders do his usual spiel. And Corey, I'm going to catch you up on what happened in the debate.
Please, thanks.
One thing at a time. So
Rio
Sanders,
does my homework.
apart from getting in a fight with Warren over whether or not he
Right.
said that he thought a woman couldn't be president. Apart from that, he didn't say anything new in this debate. He did fine, but he really was kind of like just towing the line, use his usual stump speeches. And he was going on and on about income inequality, as he always does. And it suddenly occurred to me, I'm like, wait a minute. He says he doesn't like income inequality, but the one thing, as far as I can tell, that he doesn't think should be universal is income.
Yes, okay, thank you. I had the exact same moment where as he continued to talk, it was like a light bulb went off. I was like, you're all about wealth redistribution. That is your thing. If you want to redistribute wealth, the universal basic income is like, at least it has to be a part of that. It just blows my mind that we're here.
Even if you don't understand what's happening now or what's coming,
it's
still the obvious choice.
Yes.
And like, I think with Bernie, he's so freaking old. Because and Rio and I are going to have this discussion, because it's going to be a long discussion about whether or not Bernie Sanders is the kind of socialist that Rio thinks he is. Just for a minute, Rio. I know you're like desperate to get in on that.
I want to say something before you do this.
Save that for another episode.
Yeah, because that'll go on. That'll go on for a long time.
No, we have to do this now. We have to do this now.
Oh, shit,
Did you see? I hate Project Veritas, and I'm sure that if civilization ends, it's going to be because of Project Veritas. But did you see?
What is that again? I thought
they're this. Oh my gosh, this super. I don't even know how to describe them. The thing is that they do actually sometimes get some kind of gold in the journalism that they do. I'm trying to think. James O'Keefe is his name, and he's done all of these kind of like undercover deep state.
Oh no! Fuck that guy.
Fuck that guy. Thank you. I know, and I'm so sorry that I am bringing this up. But
Okay.
you guys, if you have Rio, you've seen this. It just came out yesterday. Rio, you had to see this.
Which one?
They got into Bernie Sanders' campaign, and they found a quote-unquote, as tweeted by another person, a high-ranking canvasser in Iowa for Bernie Sanders' campaign, this dude called Kyle. And like,
of course his name's Kyle.
Of course his name's Kyle. And I can't tell for sure, but I'm pretty sure what happened is that the journalist like really got in deep, and he was smoking weed with the guy a lot, because they're having like conversations out on porches in the night, and Kyle is clearly a crazy, unhinged individual, but apparently, according to records, he's made about $12,000 so far this year. Not this year, but in entirety of this campaigning for Bernie, and he's saying the wildest stuff. He's saying like, really the gulags weren't so bad. They were paid minimum. They were paid a living wage in the gulags. They were paid. They had conjugal visits. It was really re-education, and that's the entire thing for Bernie's re-education. Man, we got to teach people not to be Nazis, and like. So this was flying around Twitter, the right's picking it up and everything, and like there are crazies in any campaign. I want to like make that known right now.
Right.
But the thing is like, this is my entire problem is. This dude potentially could be working as an administrator of Bernie's federal jobs guarantee, right? So I was just telling Rio, you might be happy to know this. This is like the first month that I am now having my basic needs met off of my YouTube channel, my Twitter account.
Badass.
Wow,
now,
congratulations.
Thank you.
Let me stop you just for 1 second. Everyone, please go, and if you haven't donated, even $1, $5, wherever you're donating stuff, go do that for Seth anyway, because it's one thing to make the UBI. He's putting out quality fucking content.
Thank you.
So go do some more, because yeah, man, I want to make sure you never stop doing this. Really, it's selfish on my part, just so we're clear.
Well, I want to be able to talk about like really how transformative this has been for me. I was in such a different place a year ago from now, and I'm going to be doing some more things about that. But like, I can guarantee you, because I'm trying to shatter this illusion of value and working, because when I bring up the fact, hey, I've crowdfunded my own UBI, people are very quick to come into my comments and say, you're being extremely lazy. Why do you feel good about this? And then I'm like,
lazy.
yeah.
Have you seen your channel?
Well, no, that
Weird,
is the
dude.
thing is like if I
Right.
was sitting around and playing video games, if I was Ninja, those people wouldn't probably say anything. If I was doing the
Weird, right?
hustle, yeah, it is weird. It's that illusion, and I need to disrobe it because if I don't, if it's not possible, do you really think? Because let's be frank, if something happens to Andrew Yang and his entire candidacy and it falls away, the wave that I'm riding on, my support, I can't expect it to continue. And anyways, I couldn't and I shouldn't continue. And video game streamers need to think about this. If anything happens to their stream, what skills do they have to continue on after that? This is why UBI is so important, I think, because it can continue to people in parts of transition. But I don't want Kyle showing up to my door, knocking on it and saying, hey man, you know that video streaming yourself isn't really work. I need you to go and break rocks for 12 hours a day. Because that's quote unquote what he said. He said we have to get people he said we have to get people to break rocks 12 hours a day because that'll teach them not to be a Nazi. That'll teach me how to live a productive life. Because me sitting around and criticizing that federal jobs guarantee, they're not going to think that I'm living a productive life. I can guarantee you that. That's why UBI is so important, because these loons, these authoritarian leftist loons are out. And it's not the message of Sanders' campaign. I don't want to conflate it to be that way, but it could be. But it could be.
I gotta throw Rio a bone right now, because that sounds like the actual Marxist socialist shit that he keeps talking about all the time. Which I'm like, no, nobody is that stupid. So apparently I am not right about that.
Go watch the video.
So again, and at fringe elements or whatever, I want to say two things about Bernie Sanders that is different, I feel, although probably, I just didn't see it in the 2016, 2015 campaign. I think that he went up to Warren, and in their conversation, he said misogyny is a huge fucking problem in this country, and it's going to make it harder for a woman to win. That's that whole fight that they had. That's all that he said, right? Because I could see him saying it. And also, it's fucking true, right? So, fine. But looking at Bernie Bros and the way, that hashtag Never Warren thing started tweeting today, really fucking horrible look, by the way. Anyone who decided to jump on that bandwagon, right? He could be doing a lot more to push down into his campaign, into this Bernie Bro culture, and cancel that fucking shit, but he won't do it. And in the same token, and this is for you, Rio. Yeah. The idea that there are people like that in his campaign, and with his defense of the federal jobs guarantee, he's literally embodying that anyway. No, people just want to work. What are you fucking talking about? What is this, like 1915? Right? He could be transforming his entire organization to be doing things that would actually help people instead of this weird ideologue type defense of breaking rocks, right? Yeah. Or inaction, because I think inaction in both situations, I think inaction is his worst crime.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that we're coming back to something that was actually a subject of the debate.
There you go.
Although that was a very fun side note. But okay, so I 100% believe Elizabeth Warren when she says that Bernie Sanders said that. And if Bernie Sanders had integrity, he would say, yeah, I said that, but what I really meant was this, or yeah, I said that, but it was just because I was frustrated at all the sexism in America. And when I reflect upon it, that's not what I really believe, or something like that. But instead, he tried to make her out to be a liar. Really? And I could, yeah. And if you watch just one thing from the debate, look at the expression she gave him both times that he said that lie. And it was like this, Mama Warren, oh boy, I can't believe you're doing this. Are you seriously saying that right now? Like, it was extremely, she was very disappointed, because I think that, like, when she made her public statement confirming that, it's not like she didn't, somehow it leaked from her campaign. Of course, I'm sure Bernie Bros think that it was intentional. Even if it was someone in Warren's campaign who intentionally leaked it, I don't believe Warren has been doing a clean campaign, and she sure as hell hasn't been attacking Bernie.
Yeah, it's not her style to be like that at all. It never has been.
It's not. And so she, in her statement confirming it, was basically just this, like, well, you asked, I have to tell the truth. This is what was said. But I don't want to get in a fight with Bernie about it. I think his heart's in the right place. He and I are trying to accomplish the same things. Like that, it was 95% of the statement was positive. And the only part that the Bernie Bros didn't like is the part where she said, well, I have to tell the truth. And it's just, this is how you can tell it's a cult of personality. And it's no longer actually about doing the right thing anymore. It's starting to get really ugly. And in my opinion, in a campaign or in a primary where most campaigns have actually been fairly positive. There have been, a few zingers about policy directed at the front runners here and there. I honestly think, and I'm open to being persuaded differently, but I think Bernie Sanders' campaign has been the most dirty of all of them so far.
Let me persuade you differently, but but at the same time, I do kind of agree with you. This is hard. This is a hard thing. It's tricky. I remember reading, and I was like, the reason why I was inclined to believe that he did say something is because they were like, he started off by talking about frustration with identity politics, and he has been well known to talk a lot about a frustration with identity politics and how. Give me 1 second.
That's awesome. Was that a dog?
It's a cat. Hold on 1 second.
A cat tail.
That's great.
That's great.
That was perfect. So and honestly, all TV studios should be this fun. Just for the record, just because you don't have cats in your CNN doesn't mean you shouldn't have them.
Yeah, Moonson's definitely a fan of the Warren campaign.
Is a perfect metaphor for politics.
You should call your cat Moonson.
It's a friend of ours is really into Korean culture and named her cat Moonson. So that's what we call it.
That's the name of my next jazz fusion band.
Yes. Okay. So before I was interrupted so blatantly like that, I just want to make sure my mic, because like I said, if I even do with it, the mic goes off. You guys can still hear me. Hoping that everyone on you can still hear me, but we're just gonna have to go with how it is. Let me know. Are you watching the comments? You'll be able to let me know if someone says something.
I can.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. So
lots of people.
Sweet. Thank you guys so much for being in the stream.
Yeah, I'll dig in some comments when you guys are done this collection of points.
Absolutely. So I was disagreeing. I was inclined to believe that he did say it because I know he has been on record to talk about a frustration with identity politics. And I can see a follow-up to his frustration in identity politics being something along the lines of gender is going to be playing a role, and I am a little bit concerned about the ways in which gender would be weaponized or how it may be difficult to win if you are a female. I could see him following up with that, but more in a sense of pessimism than as a sense of misogyny. He's more pessimistic about the ways that it could go. But what I do know for an absolute fact is that this has been used as a weapon. I mean, from the way it was set up in the debate, they had the split screen, like right as the moderator was asking the question, Warren on one, Bernie on there. You can see both of their faces. She's asking, how did it feel? And then the moderator, after Sanders denied it, said, Warren, why do you feel that, like she basically in one way or another said, Bernie Sanders, you are lying, even though there's not really any objective evidence of what was or was not said. This is clearly being used and weaponized, and I think that if they are playing dirty, like you say, they're being pushed. They're being pushed to do so.
Yes and no. It's not this one thing that makes me think that they have been dirty. Again, to be clear, this is in the context of a primary where there aren't any Donald Trumps, right? There are no true.
That's always important.
There are no outright monsters who just say the most disgusting, despicable crap at every opportunity. That doesn't exist, right? This is a primary where most people are well behaved most of the time, including most supporters. And when I talk about how clean or dirty a campaign is, I look at the things that the candidate says, and that gets most of the weight. But I also look at what the supporters say. And, that story that you told about the Bernie Sanders supporter in gulags, this is actually similar to why I believe Warren. Like, yes, in a situation where it's a he said, she said kind of thing, right? I just look at the overall context and I decide what's like the Occam's razor most likely explanation. I fully believe that happened because I have hung out with Bernie Sanders supporters in my nonprofit capacity, like my work in nonprofits, and I know how they talk in private. I know that they say things like that. I have had people tell me that I should go to the gulags, like literally, and mean it. There are a lot of really awful people, and the closest thing to Trumpkins that I have found in the Democratic Party are Bernie Sanders supporters. Just
thank you for the way you said that.
It's like there's
because that like I can agree with that statement for a couple of different reasons that hurt my heart, like for real. But if you were gonna pick the crossover, there's the crossover.
Yeah, Corey, I feel the same way. When I saw that video and it was like I saw him saying those things, where I was like, oh, this has all been so exaggerated by everyone who's told me
Right.
he is an actual Marxist and he wants blah blah blah. I'm like, come on, that's so disingenuous. But I can see, yes, there are, just like on the alt-right, yes, there are some people with some freaking crazy.
In the same way, my buddy Greg says this on the hashtag coffee show we do all the time. If you're sitting at a table of 11 Nazis, you're a fucking Nazi.
Mm.
Now, if you're hanging out with a bunch of people who literally want to ban private property, shit.
I mean, they're both illiberal. That's another word we can use that has fallen out of fashion, mostly because
I like it.
Right. Well, people now associate the word liberal with the Democratic Party, which is not the meaning of the word, right? It's like it's the founding fathers of this country were classically liberal in the sense of centering individual liberty. Now they didn't expand the rights and what was counted as a person as far as we do today, right? But the philosophy of liberalism laid the intellectual foundation for that expansion,
right?
And Trump and Sanders are both, they have illiberal worldviews. They value the collective well-being over the rights of individuals. And what a liberal would say is you don't have, that's a false choice. Like, you can protect individual rights and also take care of people. You can do both things.
Yeah.
And I mean, liberal democracy, literally the thing that makes a liberal democracy liberal is the fact that they protect human rights in their constitution. It's a constitutional democracy that says a mob rule majority can't just vote away the civil liberties of their fellow citizens.
Yeah, amen. I want to give a shout out to Patrick Montgomery, really, really good friend of mine from back up north of Tampa. He's legit badass. Just popped onto the feed.
So should we actually talk a little more about the debate? I know this is going to be.
Yeah.
There was a debate last night. I don't even.
I'm going to assume a lot of the people who are listening also didn't watch the debate. So this is partially for Corey's benefit, but also partially for their benefit. I'm just going to kind of say something that happened in the debate, and then we can all riff on it. Does that sound good?
I love it. That's it. That's great. Honestly, much better than having to watch the whole debate, if you ask me.
Oh, totally. If I had any hair, I would have been pulling it out the whole time. I had to drink a whole bottle of wine to get through it. Like, wow. Okay. One of the first questions they asked was actually about foreign policy in the Middle East, understandably, right? And most of the candidates towed the line on isolationist, anti-interventionist policy. Which is something that a lot of them share with Trump as well. Although, of course, his recent assassination of Archduke Ferdinand makes me wonder who's pulling his strings. One theory I've heard is that some senators in the Republican Party who actually are hawkish, right?
Yeah,
said,
I heard that.
Hey, you need us to vote to save your ass, so you're going to go kill this guy.
This is the important thing to remember about Trump. Trump doesn't give a fuck about any of it. It's not like he has a non-interventionist view. He does not. He says those words to get voters. That's all. You know what I mean? Like, there's no causal connection between that and anything that he does.
So he, I mean, even if he kind of believes in it a little bit, I actually think he really sort of believes in the America First mythos, which again was also like literally America First was literally used by Nazi sympathizers leading up to World War II. So we're talking about Nazis here.
Yeah.
Anyway, if what I would say is, I don't know whether that happened, but if some Republican senators who really do have that power over him right now told him that, of course he would do whatever the hell they said, right?
Yeah.
If they told him to bomb, if they told him to bomb Iran as opposed to just assassinate one Iranian in Iraq, he would have done that.
Well, the reporting on it was that he was actually farming that out into the Senate to make sure that he was getting the right votes on impeachment.
Very well.
It's all transactional, right? Which again, like, nothing would make more sense around Trump. I do want to say one thing. So, like, you know, I'm going to be critical of Bernie anytime that he deserves it. I'm going to be critical of any of them anytime they deserve it. Do not forget that if you don't vote, right? If you're like, oh, Yang didn't get in, so I'm not going to vote. A 7-2 Supreme Court will be in existence for the rest of your fucking life. If you know anyone with a uterus, the government will own her uterus and all the rights to it, right? If you think that segregation was bad, a 7-2 court could make sure the Republicans in a minority in both the Congress, Senate, never getting the presidency again, can still basically bring back segregation if they feel like it, right? it is so much bigger than any single one of us. I'm going to be fine. I'm a white guy in America, right? Like it literally, I'm great. Please make sure that you're planning on voting for the person that you know or can imagine that has the least privilege, that is the most vulnerable, right? Because it's much, much bigger than, I know we're all here for Andrew Yang. I still think he's got a really, really good secret shot at winning. All that's really, really important, right? Even if it's Bernie Sanders or Biden, who I really don't like.
Or Elizabeth Warren. I mean, think about it.
It just doesn't matter.
So
like,
again, like Bernie, I saw the never Warren Bernie bro comments on Twitter were vicious.
Yeah.
Right after the debate, I saw somebody who works for Rashad Lloyd's campaign or volunteers for, most likely, because Rashad is, broke, right? But like, cool, great. We had Rashad on. He supports UBI. That's great. This guy called Warren a corporate shill because she bowed to Biden, which was like, she made like a polite gesture with her torso, and she didn't shake Bernie Sanders' hand. She shook Pete Buttigieg's hand instead. And these people hate Biden and Buttigieg as much, if not more, than we hate Trump. Their anger is so misplaced. I mean, like literally, Biden supports a form of Medicare for all, for fuck's sake. He said that in the debate last night. He thinks, I mean, but
everyone's for universal healthcare. It's just how they get there. That's like the only difference.
Right. But he doesn't want to outlaw, right. But he doesn't want to outlaw private insurance. Right. Because he's a smart politician and he's seen the polls and he sees only 13% of Americans support it. And he's like, well, that's a good way to lose an election. Right.
Yep.
So it's not because he wants to take healthcare away from people or because he's a corporate shill. That is such bullshit. They called Warren a corporate shill because she didn't shake Bernie Sanders' hand and she shook the evil Pete Buttigieg's hand. Right.
So just to get back to brass tacks, one of them out of Bernie and Warren had created the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau that is doing more good for people on the ground than anything Bernie Sanders has done in the Senate ever.
Yeah, credit for the veterans bill that he
not something a corporate shill does. Just in case you wanted to like inject a tiny little iota of data.
Everybody in the corporate world hates Elizabeth Warren. Of course they do. Like they don't know what the hell they're talking about. It's all just about my guy or we're going to blow the whole thing up.
Yeah, and that just there's nothing shittier than that. There just isn't, right? Like any or bust on the Democratic side at all.
This is
and
underpinning.
What you're really saying is that a 7-2 Supreme Court is fine, and everything else that's going to happen if Trump wins again. Right?
This is
if you don't vote, that's a Trump vote.
This really underpins how disgusting it is to see the ways in which the media is having a ball game with divisive. Like my last video was about the ways in which there's been such blatant mistreatment of Yang. And just recently, we're seeing these really wonderful articles and discussions in, like coverage after he failed to make the debate about how he's really bringing in disaffected men. And now suddenly it's not so taboo to talk about the ways that, hey, maybe men need a little bit of help too. We're not going to push this voting demographic away, and we're going to kind of acknowledge other people as a whole. Well, no, if you're treating Yang in this blatant disregard, you're going to wind up pushing those people further away. But when you're both talking about this, and I agree ultimately, but I'm still so disgusted with everything. My question is, do you all know of some way in which populism has been resolved that did not end in unfortunate conflict?
No. Populism is always and forever a bad thing.
Yeah. So that's the thing, is like, if
the last thing we would ever want was to have people in a democracy get what they want.
Yeah, but that's not the meaning of the word populism.
Except, like, if you watch enough normalized media, right? And I know we have this problem with terms because I know what you're saying and I agree with you.
Yeah.
The vast majority of people, when you talk about populism, will just think, oh, that's when the people get what they want.
Right. You don't want to confuse populism and demagoguery.
Right. Exactly. And sadly, And as a Bernie Sanders supporter in 2015, that like just asking for what the people want to know, you're calling them a populist. I'm like, well, that just sounds fucking stupid, right? But how quickly that can turn into the demagoguery of Trump, and that's how he won.
Well,
right? So
I'm sorry, I can't let that pass. This is something that we really need to stop. Like, people need to stop proudly saying they're a populist on Twitter, right? The populist left, the populist right. I mean, populist left. Jesus. Like, why in God's name would you want to have anything in common with Donald Trump? Seriously, like just think about that for a second. But seriously, populism is not characterized by the position that people should get what they want, that the people should get what they want. The idea that the people should get what they want is called democracy, right? There is a word for that. And in practice, the way democracy actually plays out, if it's fair, right? Most people don't get everything they want because we have different values and priorities, right? And we have to compromise with each other sometimes. Populism is not that. It's not democracy. It's actually an anti-democratic idea. It's the idea that you have a strong man of some kind who claims to represent the interests of all the people against all the elites. It's a very black and white way of looking at the world where regular people are totally blameless victims and elites are all totally corrupt and crooked, right? It's this false narrative that supposedly all of the people have the same values and priorities, which is not true. I mean, for one, like Bernie Sanders' part of Bernie Sanders' position on healthcare is literally the most unpopular position on healthcare you can have. There are more people who want government out of healthcare entirely than who want a total government takeover of healthcare in the United States. No matter, like, I'm sorry, I understand some people like that position and I get it, right? And it's not even Sanders' worst position, right? Not even close. It's not that bad of a position. Globally speaking, other countries have done it and it worked out fine, right? I'll grant you all that. But if he's really representing what the people want, why is he pushing something only 13% of Americans want?
Well, can you make a divide?
Leading on MFRA in the first place too, though, right? Like that, the one positive, well, not one. There's I think a lot. You can, one of the positive things about Bernie Sanders is that he leads from the fucking front, right? Like he was talking about Medicare for all, and everyone told him it was crazy in the same way that Yang is talking about UBI, and everyone is telling him it's crazy, right? Like there is a point to that. Now, granted. And I've always said, like, from a negotiating standpoint, you come at this from the end point, and a President Bernie Sanders will end up agreeing to exactly the plan that Andrew Yang has placed out.
Which is why
it's the most thing that can pass.
Right, exactly. Which is why it makes absolutely no strategic sense to prefer him over Yang because of that slight difference in their Medicare.
Agreed.
Good point.
No, because like the difference between UBI and federal jobs guarantee is much bigger.
It's dark.
Rio, would you be able to divide populism and anti-establishmentism? Or are they the same thing?
No, they're not the same. I mean, part of the problem, I keep meaning to write like an epic blog post where I break down a bunch of different political science terms and use the actual real meanings of them, but then contextualize them in today's contemporary political environment. I think it'd be a really interesting blog, but I just haven't had time to do it yet. But the truth of the matter is a lot of these words are not mutually exclusive. Heck, like conservative and progressive aren't mutually exclusive, right? The debate is about what the sorts of things should we conserve, right? And what actually would be progress, right? Like there are very few people who are like, I don't think we should make things better, right? No, we just disagree about what constitutes progress, right? There are very few people who think we should just burn down the whole thing and throw the baby out with the bathwater. We just disagree about what parts of the bathwater to keep, right? Or what parts of the baby to keep, sorry. I guess you want to keep all the baby.
Yeah, right?
We disagree about what constitutes the baby, right?
Yeah.
But so long story short, anti-establishmentism and populism are not the same, but they are related, right? They're, they go together, but they're not the same thing. You could be anti-establishment and not be a populist.
Right.
And also, frankly, I'll say there are times when being anti-establishment makes sense. This just isn't one of them, right? This is not we are not living in the Soviet Union. We are not living in or North Korea. We are not living in a system where the establishment is so rotted to the core that it makes sense to hold that position.
Maybe not that rotted.
We're living in a situation where there are a lot of people. Democracy is messy. Our democracy is imperfect. There are a lot of different competing interests, and not everybody's interests are given equal weight. It's unfair, right? But it is not through and through rigged, right? The way Trump says. Populists, what they like to do is they like to exaggerate the actual corruption that always exists in any democratic system because utopias aren't real, right? And then persuade everybody that if you just give them all the power, they'll do away with all the corruption. But in reality, they just become an emperor every time.
How much credence do you put to the part that some people would say we live in an oligarchy? That if you look at the numbers, if you look at the way that our legislation votes opposed to what people want, that it always lines up with the money. Always.
That's a really good question. And
it is a good question.
I know that you and Corey agree about that.
What do we agree about? What are you talking about?
You guys agree that we live in an oligarchy.
Well, no. What would the signs of an oligarchy be, and what data can you provide
okay. And
that would dissuade us from that view?
Now, okay, the first thing I'll say is that obviously it doesn't have to be that we are 100% an oligarchy or 0% an oligarchy, right? The odds are we're somewhere along the spectrum, right?
Okay, better question. What percentage of oligarchy are we, since we are?
I think we're something like 75%, which is too high.
What's an acceptable percent?
Well, okay, acceptable. Well, no, and this is interesting. That's exactly the number that I might have gone 80, but it probably would have been right around in that vein, right?
Yeah.
And again, it tracks exactly with multiple studies that have been done that basically say if you're a billionaire, these are the number of policies you're going to get versus millionaire, yada yada yada, right? Right. And it well, billionaires get literally everything that they want. I mean, they're billionaires. Why wouldn't they? They're clearly better than the rest of us. But you know, even millionaires, you know, which between the two of them is where all the money for these elections is coming from until we get democracy bucks. They're getting what they want. And again, poor people or anyone in the middle class, even by Rio's definition, which is really well off, just because we're all on the same page. They only ever get what they want when rich people want it too, like ever.
Okay, let's talk about the middle class for a second, because I feel like that's actually really related to why we are too much toward an oligarchy, right?
Okay.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that you guys agree it's not 100%. So the problem is we have too much. The government is too powerful. That's actually the fundamental cause of this problem. The government, because the government has so much power, especially the federal government, our system was intended to be far more decentralized than it is. We have executives abusing executive power. We have Congress abusing federal power and not respecting the rights of states. We have a very centralized and increasingly powerful government. And because of that, corporations in their own interest are going to go in there and realize it's cheaper to bribe this incredibly powerful institution, right, to give them advantages. What capitalism actually is a separation of the state and business, kind of like we are supposed to have a separation of church and state. By the way, God bless Ron Reagan. The Ronald Reagan's son does those atheism commercials, every single commercial break in every single debate, and it's just delightful. Anyway, so that's what it should be, right? What we don't have that. We have a kleptocracy, right? Which is actually, in a lot of ways, very similar to socialism. In a kleptocracy or socialism, in both cases, the government controls, or the government and the business, right, kind of merge into one thing. In both cases, what's different is in the case of kleptocracy, business is controlling the government. And obviously, it's not 100%. You know, it's a give or take. But right now, I would say business is more powerful than the government. But the only reason that matters is because the government is also really fucking powerful. And so there's this chimera, this monster that is making it possible for businesses to totally screw over the little guy. That's what's going on right now. If we actually had capitalism where business and government were separate, were properly separated, that would be impossible. Okay, so should we actually talk about the debate?
No, well, this has been very, like, this kind of deeper discussion. When we have been talking, like, ideology in the episodes before, I can see that you both have spent a lot of time on it. But most recently, I've gotten into the political compass memes subreddit on Reddit. And Rio, I think you especially would love this. The humor there is fantastic. And people are actually able to sit down and have, like, conversations. Like, there's the four quadrants: authoritarian left, authoritarian right, liberal left, liberal right, and every single one of them will like say what they are, and they all just get shit thrown at them, and they laugh and they throw it at other people. So it's really good, and I think having a better understanding of what that means, of how that works, will help voters know what they need when they go to the voting poll. And know what path cuts through. And I think Andrew Yang is able to find that way that can bring that forward. I would hope.
Yeah. I mean, I certainly want. I think all models are imperfect, and what I mean by that is that models are designed to measure. They make decisions, philosophical decisions about what to measure, right? Which means that there are certain things they're not measuring. The political compass is certainly more interesting and nuanced way of looking at politics than just the traditional, like, left-right spectrum.
Right. Yeah.
Right. It's not actually my preferred model. partially because I think that it assumes that certain positions exist, which I would say are actually oxymoronic. I don't think it's possible, for example, to have a libertarian left. But that's a really, really, really complicated argument. And that's part of the reason why I think Yang is not really on the left. And I know that is going to possibly hurt him with a bunch of people who consider it really important to identify as being left wing, or what the hell that means. But libertarian, before the Overton window was blown up by the likes of Trump and Sanders, right? The traditional left and right divide in the United States was really between individualists and collectivists, right? And so libertarian left sounds like an individualist collectivist. So if by that they mean striking a nice balance, then I'm fine with that, but I wouldn't call that left. You see what I'm saying? So it's just, but like the model that I prefer is a circle. And all the communists listening to us are going to say this is horseshoe theory and that it's supposedly been debunked, which is not true. Just because your political science professor isn't fond of horseshoe theory doesn't mean it's been debunked. But,
also, what the fuck is horseshoe theory?
Yeah, go ahead and explain for us if you would.
Yeah. They're like,
Jesus, we really should talk about the debate, though, you guys. Okay, horseshoe theory.
Chat, let us know if you want us to switch over to the debate.
I was gonna say, quit being interesting. Hold on, before
Chat,
pin in horseshoe theory, yeah, because I got to read some of this. Some of the comments on here. This is the stuff I'm interested in. Popped out at me.
Oh, okay.
Basically, this is the conversation that we need to be having. So I mean, honestly, I didn't have to watch the debate. A bunch of people argued about stuff, and there was a couple of moments we talked about them already. Fucking now, what the fuck is horseshoe theory again, please?
Okay. Yeah, no, I mean, I actually do have a bunch of notes, so we can totally talk about the debate, and that's going to happen. But yes, okay.
By the way, yeah. Chet is here.
Oh, of course he is.
He is Chet. Hey, Chet.
He identifies as a anarcho-communist, which is a kind of libertarian leftist, I suppose.
So Chet said Rio is making the same definitional mistakes he complains about. There you go.
Oh, well, this is why we don't bring the chat in. But
game on. Chet,
no, I think that's
Chet's like part of our family. We have a communist in the family. He's definitely a special case.
Oh, not Chet. Chat.
Chet. Chat. Yeah. So history of libertarianism is leftist.
I know. I've heard him say that before.
Really quick. I'll make this quick point.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
I think that you could be a libertarian leftist and understanding that you could have individual collectivism, because, like I said, Andrew Yang, a universal basic income is redistribution. It's not abolishing private property at the same time.
Right.
The big issue that I can see, perhaps landlords might be able to abuse this. You don't have any evidence. You don't have any proof. I would think that would lend credence to your revolution if all of a sudden across the board landlords abuse the UBI like you say it would. But when you look at what universal basic income has been able to do in studies of communities across the world, what do people do? I brought this up when I learned about how Latino communities will commonly have money pots where every single family in this community will give a little portion of their paycheck to this emergency fund. And every week, a portion of that fund goes out to one family, and there's always a little bit more set aside for emergency cases. So it's this is a common way of doing it in that. And that's what happens with a universal basic income. People put their money together to buy temples. They built a temple with their universal basic income money. That cash in the hands of the lower socioeconomic run does lead to better outcomes for that collective as a whole, especially in terms of the ways that they're able to engage more in politics. They can actually travel to the polls. They can actually express their individual and collective desires at the same time.
But ultimately, and please, Rio, correct me if I'm wrong. And somebody just said, do we need to put this much labels? If we never discuss the label again, I'd be really fucking happy.
Yeah. No,
I don't. There's almost no value in it except to constantly talk past each other when we could be talking about policy, which is where the rubber actually meets the road. It's pointless. It's literally pointless. And it just does this word mean this to you, or does this mean you could just talk policies and then we could talk about whether ideas.
I'll take the blame on this one this time.
No, that's okay. I would goad Rio into it as much as anybody. But I think the
Corey, I don't know. We gotta resolve.
That was a caveat.
We got to resolve what's on the table here so we can get back to the debate.
Yeah. Because we definitely have to get back. This is what this show is going to be called. got to get back to the debate. And
I
never
would,
do.
I'm sure we will. I'm totally
Yeah.
sure. I've got a lot of notes that's going to happen. Okay. But like, honestly, how do I put this? What Chet said is something we need to talk to Chet about, right? So Chet is a guy who runs our Facebook group. He's one of two people who runs our Facebook group. One's on the right, one's on the left to balance it out. Corey and I left our Facebook group because we realized it was much more productive to produce episodes than to argue one-on-one with fans on Facebook. But not that we don't love it, we do. That's why we were doing it, right? But at some point,
one of us definitely loved it.
What's the best use of our time? Okay, so when Chet talks about libertarianism having a left lean, I can understand why someone with his perspective would say that, and I can see why he would think what I said is ahistorical. Part of what's confusing is that we now use the word liberal to refer to social liberalism, and we don't use it to mean what it actually used to mean. So if I'm being really strict, what I should say is liberal, because that's actually the correct meaning of what we now call libertarian today, if that makes sense to anybody. Okay, that's gonna bother some people. I know Chet will actually be satisfied with that answer.
Yeah, Chet actually just said, "I like the poli-sci discussions. I think they're helpful as long as we don't get hung up on it."
Okay, now about the political philosophy thing, though, I don't agree that it's never useful to talk about labels. Clearly, part of the reason why is because whether we talk about them or not, people do think that way. People do have a set of values and priorities, and it is useful when you're trying to come up with political strategy, rhetoric, and even policy to know where people stand in their core values.
Well, then wouldn't
what I would like to see, right?
Yeah,
go ahead.
No,
I was just going to say what I would like to see is a little bit more consistency in the way we use the words, because that's where talking past each other really becomes an issue.
Right. So if the goal is to understand for policy or political reasons what how people are feeling, then the only thing that matters is how they view those terms in real time.
Mm-hmm.
Right, which means that every time for the first 3 months of our marriage, for the Moving Forward podcast, every single time you said left, well, it's like it was not how people would self-identify as left. Ipso facto, like kind of destroying that argument. We're not. I think we're past that now. Like we're evolving past that over time, which is fantastic. The only thing I wanted to say before on the UBI thing and the capacity to be both individualist and collectivist. The UBI allows you to just decide, like in that, and I was gonna say, like, was that liberalism? Like, you don't, if you want to, as somebody receiving UBI, right? If it's going into a community where you're doing a collectivist effort, well, you all decided to do that at a micro level, right? Or if like the three of us decide to fund a giant mural of Yang's face on the side of a mountain or whatever, that's a collectivist effort, but, right? We don't have to do it. Also, no, cult of personalities are bad.
Oh.
We could come up with something better.
Damn it, you're right. All right,
like your cat's tail going across the street, something. But the rest, you wouldn't have to do it. It's basically my point, right? Like you could just decide for yourself.
So really quickly, horseshoe theory is the idea that
thank you.
If you go far enough in one direction, you wind up in a situation where they're not the same. Critics will try to say they're not the same. No, of course not. That's not the idea. It's not that they're the same. It's that they have things in common with each other that are relevant. Okay. If you go far enough to the far right or far enough to the far left, you wind up in a situation where you have certain things in common with one another. And the things they have in common with one another is their illiberalism. So I don't actually like a horseshoe. I like a circle because I think they actually do meet each other at the bottom. Okay. So what I would say is there's like a top half of the circle is the liberal half, and the bottom half of the circle is the illiberal half. And in the top half, if you were to take the top half of that circle and straighten it out like a line, that would give you our traditional left-right divide in the Overton window before all the populism came in recently. You would have classic liberalism, which is what Republicans used to be, and you would have social liberalism, which is what Democrats used to be, and those would be the top half of your circle. If you take the bottom half of the circle and you flatten it out, you would have socialism over here and kleptocracy over here. Okay, I'm just going to let that sit there and go back to the debate.
You can't just let that sit there. My brain's having some issues.
I like that, actually. And again, like, would I ever bring it up in lieu of actually talking about a policy?
No, let's talk policy, right?
No, I wouldn't.
Okay, so you know who had the best answer about the Middle East foreign policy, in my opinion?
Yanks it back to the debate like a champion.
Very well done, yeah.
Steyer.
Okay, that came up this morning. We were doing hashtag coffee. Steyer keeps coming up. So my my co-host on hashtag coffee is his name's Greg. He actually worked for Our Future, which is Steyer's political campaign. And again, while I'm not a huge fan of billionaires buying elections, this fucker has been using his money to organize like a boss in swing states. One of the main reasons why we're sitting as Democrats owning the Congress right now is specifically because of the organizing stuff that he did, because the DNC at all were not doing it. Right. It's insane. So, you know, he was already kind of on my radar or whatever. I'm like, screw this guy. I'm seeing from everywhere that suddenly Steyer is a lot of people's second choice out of the blue. So what did he say? Like, what? Like, because he's always kind of been nice, right? He like knows climate change is a problem. You know, talks a really good game about income inequality, which always comes off as a little, well, I'm a billionaire, but whatever. He's saying it. So what happened last night that you know, what was the policy? What did he come up with?
Oh, well, I mean, I would not so sure I would go so far as to say as a policy. I thought it was the best answer, right?
Oh, okay.
The reason I thought it was the best answer is because everybody else said the anti-interventionist, isolationist thing, which is something they all have in common with Trump, at least in terms of Trump's rhetoric. Who knows what the hell he actually thinks. And Steyer said, you know, it's like, it's easy to say we need to get out of wars, we should stop getting involved, et cetera. And he's like, the truth of the matter is it's messy. Past administrations have made decisions that had consequences. We can't just pull everybody out. We've seen what happens when you do that. You create power vacuums and, you know, ISIS expands. It's not good, right? So, but what he said is what's missing is nobody has a strategy. Trump has no strategy. Right. And I really appreciate he said that. He's like, we need whatever we want to do. We need to decide what our goal is and figure out how to actually accomplish it. Not just willy-nilly get ourselves into little conflicts and interventions here and there without any strategy. And I was just like, yes, thank you. Right.
Yeah. As somebody who, again, like the Obamas don't get into stupid wars thing, you know, was sort of the magic one-liner around this kind of thing. But yeah, and then promptly just kept on with it for a really, really long time, right? Like
yeah, but he never did anything as reckless as what Trump did.
God, no! It's not even no.
Both in terms
but it wasn't
of
perfect.
falling out and pushing forward, right? Whenever it's like this game of chess, and every move he makes us less safe. It puts our king more in jeopardy. Whether he's trying to be offensive or defensive, every move is a bad move. That is Trump's foreign policy. Seriously.
Yep. It's honestly, it's whatever will win the news cycle in that moment, which you know is
which is a really stupid way. It's like if you were an idiot who didn't know how to play chess, and all you did was you moved a piece and like, how does the crowd react? Oh, they like that one. I'll put it here. How did the crowd react? Oh, I like the crowd doesn't fucking know how to play chess, dude. You're the chess. You're in the competition. You should be the one who knows how to play chess.
How fucked up is this universe where that fucking worked?
Well, that's the thing is, I mean, I don't know. I saw a video of like some high profile Pentagon official. He's now retired. And he was like bringing up the fact that like at the time of 9/11, it was being laid out like we're going to go into Afghanistan. We're going to go to Iraq. We're going to go all here. We're going to wind up back to Iran. Like that was a path that had been laid out by certain officials in the military industrial complex. And no matter the president, it's been different flavors, but the overall path has still been followed. Obama, in whatever manner, just did it a little bit more, I don't know, professionally. But then you get Trump in the hot seat, and it still winds up happening, but the degree in which it happens, the situation involved is a massive, massive problem. I think that's the appeal of an isolationist, is that like if you can just acknowledge like, hey, there are forces here beyond what the president foreign power desire is that are going to try and get what they want done. How do you combat that? Steyer was interested, like, this is what I meant by Bernie being an amalgamation in 2016, because there were only really two people who were debating each other, is that now you get all these different personalities, and Steyer was able to take those shoes of like pointing out, why aren't we talking about like what is actually happening here? And I really wish that Yang had been in that spot, because he would have been able to do something similar as well, I think.
Yeah. Pete Buttigieg also had a good answer on foreign policy. He kind of did the isolationist thing. And I agree with you, Seth. I understand the psychological appeal to people. Go back and read about the anti-interventionist America First movement prior to World War II and how they literally have the blood of millions of people on their hands. And that might help you give you some perspective. I'm not saying that the answer is to always intervene, but if you think the answer is to never intervene, go read about that. That's all I'll say. All right. Pete Buttigieg pointed out that Trump pulling out of the Iran nuclear deal is kind of the reason that we're now possibly at war with these people in the first place. Like, it wasn't a perfect deal, but it made the world a safer place. That's pretty much verbatim what he said. And he said also he's completely dropped any efforts to try to denuclearize Russia or anybody else. Like, he's literally making the chance that we're all going to die in a nuclear holocaust higher every day that he is in the White House. So thank you, Pete Buttigieg, for pointing that out too. Just to throw something positive out there.
After the election, Radiolab brought up they did an episode on the protocols for what it takes for a president to launch nuclear weapons. Nothing will scare you more than that, and nothing should. It is, and I don't care who the president is, because there is a statistical likelihood that anyone over the age of 60 will just have a day where they're an idiot. Right? I mean, that, like, as somebody, I'm 44, I'm starting to notice that I'm forgetting more stuff all the time. I drank like a fish for my entire music career. I'm blaming that for part of it. But, like, it's a thing that I'm experiencing, right? So, like, to have any president, any single one human being can, without anyone intervening, bomb Calgary right now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why I've been putting Calgary into this story ever since I heard it. I don't know why.
And they absolutely that is
nothing can stop them.
Completely unconstitutional, if not for the fact that Congress just decided to give the president that power. They did not need to do, and they should not have done. Now, obviously, there needs to be situations where if there is an imminent threat, right, somebody needs to be able to respond quickly without having to go through legislation, right?
Well, it's mutually right. Yeah. I mean, this is, I am sensitive to the idea that true détente, mutually assured destruction or whatever. I mean, honestly, it stopped major world wars ever since nuclear weapons have been created. So, like, that's a weird thing that is true, right? Yeah. We are, in fact, safer because we're able to murder the planet at whim, which is
as long as we never actually do it. Right.
Right. Yeah. That ends the statistical
and we don't want to
liability.
We shouldn't give nuclear weapons all the credit, because the creation of the European Union,
all that stuff, right?
But like, like these things, like Brexit is scary in part because that also makes the whole world less safe, right?
Yep. Yeah.
When countries are closer together, like, okay, first of all, you can't fight globalization. That's just a natural consequence of modern technology. It is not something you can declare a war on. The war on terror is more likely to win. Okay. If you're wasting your time spinning your hamster wheels fighting against globalization, you have the wrong diagnosis of our problem. Okay. But, like, not only that, but when you bring, like, the European Union together so that they have things in common, they're going to stop fighting with each other. Up until then, they were constantly at war with each other. And that was not that long ago. That is a good thing.
Yeah.
This brings me back to this desire that I had that somehow we could embrace automation, that if we can get through some of these core issues and utilize technology to get us there, and to, like, I think the biggest issue with, like, accepting kind of big vision global peace projects and the inclination that detractors from that will immediately go to, like, New World Order and, like, some grand scheme, and, like, we want to have there open borders and all that nonsense. That is because they cannot tangibly themselves feel that prosperity, because you're sharing it with other people. It's that zero-sum worldview we were talking about before. If we really want to deal with these, like, existential issues that we're talking about, to where there is no clear answer, the best solution we can possibly do is come up with a methodology that works, that you can export across the country. And technology is this beautiful thing that, if wielded correctly, I believe we could get somewhere with.
Yeah, no, you're so globalization is something that was inevitably going to happen, and that does put a pinch on a lot of people. And this actually really does, Corey's going to like this, because it actually makes that circle that he found kind of interesting. It's very tangible and practical. Okay. The reason that liberal democracy is in danger all over the world right now is because the stresses of globalization, which includes automation, okay, both outsourcing of jobs, automation, the whole picture, right?
Yep.
Elites are citizens of the world. They don't view the world through the prism of their small town anymore. That's not the way that people who are playing in the big leagues think. That's just and nor should they. You don't want people who are in charge ignoring so much of the world when the world can come crashing down on you at any moment in a global world. That's just the facts. I'm sorry, right? But what's happening is it's making a lot of people feel a pinch, right? Okay. And then that means that the voters, they're not thinking very rationally. As Yang's pointed out, when you're economically struggling, it actually lowers your IQ. They're starting to elect people, whether it's on the left or the right, who are in the bottom half of that circle. And that is why liberal democracy is in trouble. And the reason why completing the circle is useful is because if you imagine flattening out the bottom half, you can see how a democracy could get in serious trouble if they waste time arguing about whether to be on this side or that side of the bottom half of the circle.
Yeah.
When what they need to do is move to the top.
So that's just what I was about to say, is like, this conversation is like, why in the world does our debate stage not include some type of like cerebral actual analysis of these problems? It's completely non-existent. With Yang's absence last night, gone completely. It was terrible. Yang's the only person who, like, for the first time was saying things where I was like, holy crap, he's bringing like consciousness to the people through the national television. We need him so much.
Well, and also like Steyer's answer on as described, and I wouldn't be surprised if it was the only nuanced answer of the whole crowd, right? At the end of the day, like I am absolutely over just unilaterally going into the Middle East and being an American empire at the point of a gun. I think that's immoral, unethical, and it's wrong. Now, the solution to that is flooding the global market with cheap solar panels, but never mind that, right? The idea that, and it's what China is and will do, for the record. they're guilty of many things, but
they're also exporting a bunch of coal right now to make a quick buck.
Well, coal and coal plants. So that it's not like they're guiltless for sure. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, like I was the first one to defend when we left the Kurds. Like, anyone who understands anything about the Iraq War at all, right? And I'm really good friends with Ash Gallagher, who's a war correspondent, was embedded with the Kurds, was embedded with the Iraqi army, was embedded with the U.S. Army Iraq. Like I feel like I kind of know that a little bit more than the average, although there's a lot more to know that Americans just don't know. It's frustrating to me how little I know about it. But she was embedded with Kurdish fighters that were funded by America and were in the first Iraq War before we left them to die at that time too. It was brutal and heartbreaking, insane when just by tweet he's like, "Fuck it, we're all gonna leave! Yay! I'm gonna have 3 Trump towers in Turkey." Right?
It's he only did, which he only did to pander to the dumbest part of the isolationist intervention, because a lot of isolationists.
That's not why he did it.
Well,
he did it for money.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, I think it was both. I think he's doing.
He was on the phone with Erdogan 2 hours before that.
Mm-hmm.
He's got 2 fucking towers in Turkey. He did it for money.
I know. I mean, and they could nationalize his towers, which is why we should require the president to vest their interests, which we do, and which he did not do. That is another thing he could be impeached for, by the way. Right? If we have new articles of impeachment, that should be on there.
100%. There was actually a party in the Turkish government that is connected to the president that said exactly that.
Yeah, his violation to the emoluments clause is also impeachable. Now we'll actually talk.
Violations.
Remember, Buttigieg had a little nuance too, because he did a really good line about how Trump is making the whole world and Americans less safe, which is a good line. On trade,
I mean, that's less nuanced and more obvious, but okay, I'll allow it.
Well, no, which is why I said Steyer's answer was the best, right?
Okay,
it was a low bar though. It was a low bar set by a bunch of people just pandering. I'm sorry. All right, Andrew Yang probably would have had a better answer on that. Foreign policy has not been his strong point, but he's just really sharp, and you can tell that he at least knows what's going on and that it's complicated, right? Which is great.
Right.
As opposed to Trump, he's like, "Oh, I know better than everybody. I know better than I'm better than the best general." Blah blah blah. No, you're not. You cranky old fool.
Trade wars are easy. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So the next question after that one was about trade, right? And for the second question in a row, Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren took the same position as Donald Trump on that question. First, they took the same position as him on foreign policy, and then they took the same position as him on trade. But Joe Biden, good old Joe, actually had the best answer on trade, in my opinion. What did you think, Seth? You saw this part of it, right?
You know, I'm trying to think back and remember this exactly because Warren and Sanders really stole the thunder right there. The one thing that I really took away was the fact that Warren clearly lied when she told Yang she would look into it because, you know, Yang made the point, right? This was never debunked by fact checks or anything like that. He brought up the point. He said 4 million manufacturing jobs automated, gone. Automation has affected us more than trade outsourcing and will increasingly do so as the years go on. Of course, his voice wasn't there. The fact that that just was allowed to go by the wayside, it blows my mind, and it makes me furious that Warren clearly lied. It's not like she's going to change her tune on stage, even if she did suddenly change it.
Yeah, that's part of the problem, is that you paint yourself into a corner where now you're going to be accused of flip-flopping or being too much of a globalist corporate shill, which she's already being accused of.
Yep.
Right? So I don't know if she read his book or not. I think she reads a lot of books, and she may have read his book and just not really remembered it all, or maybe it just failed to persuade her, or she thought that it was a good point, but it's not the most important thing to focus on in her rhetoric. Who knows, right? But yeah, no, I agree. Like, it's completely, obviously, when it comes to trade, I think Warren and Sanders are terrible. Their policies are the same as Trump's. They aren't working now. They're not going to work then. Now, in all fairness, would they go to the same extent in terms of trade wars, unilateral trade wars with China? No. And that is the one difference with them, is at least they recognize that the trade wars are hurting people in this country, because of course they are, because they are taxes on people in America that accomplish nothing.
Right. That was the one thing about Biden's answer, was that if there is something to focus on trade right now, it is intellectual property. And I think that was the strength of his. But as for everything else he said, I'll need you to recap, because it's been a while. That was a terrible debate, man.
Well, this was an even lower bar than the foreign policy one. But basically, the reason I liked Biden's answer is because he recognized that, of course, it's easy to do what Sanders and Warren and Trump do and say, oh, NAFTA was terrible, TPP was terrible. And, you know, like, Biden was there when they negotiated freaking TPP. He gets it. He's like, you know what, you guys, like, it might have been imperfect, but it was the best deal we could get. And this is the key line that he made that I thought was very point, which is like, either we're going to be part of setting the rules of international trade or not. And we want to be part of it. Duh. Right. Like, so once again, much like Steyer's really good answer on foreign policy, Biden's was the best answer on trade, because he broke through the stupid black and white pandering that everybody else was doing. And much to my disappointment, even Pete Buttigieg signed on to the whole protectionist bullshit in his answer. Hopefully he was just pandering. I hope he doesn't really believe it.
Right.
Said, wasn't he for UBI for a minute too?
Oh yeah. Buttigieg? Yeah, he started off very strong, talking about his industrial background. He's from the Midwest. He's where these areas have been. And like, for a moment at the very beginning, I was like, whoa, this is so cool. Already UBI is a multi-candidate platform here. Yeah, you know, Biden's answer into trade reminded me of Yang's Data World Organization, of like, you know, we have to come together. We have to have a voice. We have to be a leader in what's happening. So yeah, strong answer there.
Yeah. Again, really low bar set, but like, at least he recognized, at least he was the one person who was willing to say, you know, it's not black and white, you know, and we don't live in a fairy tale land where we can get everything we want. Let's talk about this like grown-ups.
Yeah.
What a strange idea.
What a crazy, wild idea.
What is this grown-up thing you're talking about? We still get to throw shit at each other, right?
All the time, yes. And we're going to do that forever. So they also spent a lot of time speaking about impeachment, and then I noticed they went into some like specific targeted questions for each candidate. They're asking Buttigieg, they were like, why do you think you're not doing so well in South Carolina? What's the deal? Why can't you get black voters? Which can I just say that I am over the moon that Dave Chappelle and Donald Glover have both, I think they're both going to be in South Carolina. there's no amount of money
Wow.
that an individual person could donate that has the potential to really give new communities a look into Yang. And I really do wish he could have been on there to answer that question in some way and be like, hey, you'll never
and
guess.
like what I wanted, because people were asking like about counter programming or whatever, and I know Yang would never do that because he's got too much class, but I still want him to do it because I categorically do not have that much class. But what what I really would like
true.
to see.
Listen to him play the guitar and sing, you guys. He's a
Yeah, dude. Any hack can play guitar.
You're a gent.
That
Anyway, here's Wonderwall.
Don't make me get my guitar and play. I know I'm a music whore and I'm cool with it. They pay me money to play guitar. That's ridiculous. But that fuck were we talking about? I just totally got. What were we talking about?
We were talking about how
counter programming.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So what I would have loved to see, and I can't stop thinking about it now, is a town hall where Joe Rogan, Dave Chappelle, and Elon Musk, and Donald Glover, who I totally forgot about, who I think walks on water in basically every possible way. But they host a panel where they ask Andrew Yang all the questions that are getting asked on the debate stage, but they edit them so they're not lame.
Yeah.
This is why they should hire you, Corey. That's a really good idea. They should do that.
It would be.
I mean, the Yang campaign needs to hire Corey.
I'm telling you, they
He'll
would
do
have
it for
had.
free. Just call him up and say, "Hey, Corey, what do you do?"
Fuck yeah, I would do that for free. Are you kidding me right now? It would have had at least 10 times the viewership, right? Like whatever network put that on, and also like Rogan's podcast could just do it. You know that Rogan's podcast by itself is one of the top 10 TV shows in the States. It's massive.
He said that he has something like globally 80 plus million views per episode, downloads on the
that's nuts. Like
Yeah, it's crazy.
that's Game of Thrones nuts.
CNN's
Right? Like,
nightly viewership is like 250,000.
It's
right?
crazy, right? Like Rachel Maddow on Friday gets like 9 million and she wins. 80 million. Like, it's ridiculous.
I mean, I don't think Rogan gets that many on every episode, but one thing that's amazing
in the double digits, which is
one thing that's amazing about podcasting, and part of the reason that we're doing this medium, apart from the fact that you can do it on a shoestring budget, which is great, right? Yay for the grassroots. You never thought you'd hear me say that. Anyway,
in fact, that's going to be my ringtone starting.
But like the cool thing about podcasts is that however many people are watching this right now, it's only a tiny fraction of the number of people who will consume it over the next, year, right? Because there are people who go and they just binge every episode of a podcast.
Yeah.
Over time, it just really adds up, and it's great, right? Steyer had the second best answer on trade. And obviously we should say trade was the first question where Yang's absence was very clearly felt, because literally nobody would talk about the actual cause of most of our job loss in this country. And it was despicable. And the Democratic Party should be ashamed of themselves for not just not having him on the stage, because, that's a complicated issue we can get into, but like whether he's going to be on there or not, somebody in the party should have picked up that mantle, and Yang would have been only too happy to hear you steal his idea. Okay. Because that's the whole point. Anyway, Steyer's had the second best answer on trade, and that's because even though he definitely did a little bit of the protectionist, pandering, and did not mention automation, he did, however, point out that Trump's renegotiation of NAFTA included absolutely no climate change talk whatsoever, and there was no reason for it not to, other than the fact that Trump thinks that it's a Chinese hoax, and that is disgusting.
Yeah.
And that was an excellent detail for him to have pointed out.
And that's, again, never mind the 7-2 Supreme Court that I've been screaming about all day, because just thinking about it freaks me out. On climate change, there is no Democratic candidate that's bad on climate change compared to Donald Trump.
It would be really hard to.
There are Democratic,
right? Like one side is like, I like turtles and making money from everybody, and the other side is like, climate change is real. Here's 10 different ways to solve it.
That was one thing.
One side is saying rake the forest.
But he's not saying that Jay is for genius.
Is that what they're going to do? So if the federal jobs guarantee happens and Donald Trump or someone like him is in office, that's what your job's going to be. You're going to be out there raking the redwood forest.
Sweet Christ, you're right.
It's either that or you're going to be down building the wall. One or the other.
Right.
Pick your choice. Get a rake.
A wall. Could you imagine? We're absolutely going to have a jobs guarantee, but you're going to be building a wall and shooting immigrants.
Yep.
Oh yeah, probably.
That's going to be your job. $15 an hour.
$15 an hour.
Somebody
the more kids you shoot,
Right. I wish one of the moderators, and I know this would have seemed like they're supposed to be, impartial, which is never true. But one of the moderators should have asked Bernie Sanders which he personally would prefer, a minimum wage job or an extra $1,000 a month passive income for life.
You're exactly right. Like, this is the thing. We can spend all day, and I would be happy to, dissecting the federal jobs guarantee and saying, how exactly is this going to work? The fact that the media has not used this as a point is beyond me, because it does require another look at, because God forbid we don't question this at all, and then Kyle Jurek shows up at my door. I'm seriously worried about that. But you're right. And another thing, though,
a lot of people like him out there. A lot.
And like, he's making more money than me, and like, I am supporting Yang with everything that I've got. I'm not making a dime being affiliated with this campaign, but Kyle's in there. I'm not saying he's a super influential person. In there, he's making money, work his way up. He could be someone who's just fit, and it's not until he grabs that power that he's going to just totally, go off the chains.
No, it's like the Khmer Rouge. Like they had a left-wing populist stoking outrage and anger and blaming rich people and elites. Look at the number of Bernie Sanders supporters who literally have "eat the rich" on their profile. Now imagine if I change my profile to say "eat the poor," right? You should be equally disgusted about both of those statements.
he only says that in jest.
That's the problem. Yeah,
that's me as a vampire, right? With like blood, and it says like "eat the poor," and I'm like, Count Rio.
No, it would just be a picture of you eating in a wine cave. Right? Like, be some poor
living off the blood of the proletariat, man.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, like you wouldn't necessarily drink the blood. Like it would be fine dining.
It would be an infusion. You're not going to drink it.
Yeah, exactly.
Blood is fine dining. Okay, we are going downhill fast. Think about that. Eat the rich. That is disgusting. It is despicable. That is exactly the kind of anger and mentality that Bernie Sanders is intentionally stoking, and it's the kind of anger and mentality that caused genocide multiple times in history. Don't go there. Don't go there.
It's weird. I mean, it's clearly a joke. Well, like, for some.
No, it's not. They mean it. A lot of them mean it. Like, do they literally want to cannibalize people? No. Do they have enough hatred directed at rich people that a lot of them want them thrown in gulags or otherwise? Totally.
I got to dial this back for a second. Every time that the average people got mad enough to eat the rich deserved it.
Oh God, no! I don't think so. No.
Well, the issue is
Khmer Rouge wasn't the rich; it was literally everyone.
That's the thing. It's always everyone.
Like, let them eat cake.
Well,
did they deserve to get their heads chopped off after hundreds of years of people living under serfdom?
Well, the thing is that it's not just rich people, right? It turns into like anyone who has ever said anything against an administration.
For the record, don't get me wrong. The second that people start getting put up against the wall, it's only a matter of time before it's you, right? Like,
right.
I'm in no way, shape, or form. All I'm saying is the prime mover of those things were the systems that caused the inequality in the first place. There is a level of fertile ground from which this is springing that can get solved. And Rio, you and I agree on how to solve those things largely. Right?
Yes, we do. And smart elites everywhere, it would be in their interest. And I wish the Democratic Party would just go back to choosing their candidates in smoke-filled rooms. Primaries are stupid. They should have just chosen Andrew Yang. They should have just said, Andrew Yang, your ideas are the best. You're going to be our candidate. That's how the parties chose their candidates for most of history. Okay?
Right.
Our primaries are a recent thing, and they're a failed experiment in my opinion, but I'm sure that'll make all kinds of popular with a lot of people.
Yep.
But you're right. Yang is the Silicon Valley guy.
Twitter calls him the smart one on our podcast. So now, granted, like if those smoke-filled,
everyone on Twitter called no.
Okay, one guy, but it really stuck out.
I really have to push back on that. The main threat to liberal democracy right now, not just in the U.S. but all over the developed world, including places that have far better and more effective democracies than we have, places that have parliamentary democracies that have universal healthcare already, right? Have lots of things that Bernie Sanders thinks is going to
Careful, you're running into a trap.
Those places are going downhill too, okay?
Why?
And the reason they're going downhill is because of regular people buying into populist bullshit.
Okay.
Yeah, Corey, we can't agree that it's a self-perpetuating system and then say that the rich also deserve it. It's either the system or the
It is.
rich.
Well, here's the thing.
But is it? But do all rich people?
Here's
Does Steyer deserve to be eaten by the mob?
No, I'm not saying anyone deserves to be eaten. I'm saying that there's a reason why this level of animosity is happening.
And it's always been inequality. It's always been at a record high.
Right. And the even in those countries that are doing better than they are here, the one functional problem that everyone is having is that the policy ideas that the in a true democracy would be happening, in a representative democracy would be happening, are not. And the reason why they're not, listen, the reason why they're not
True everywhere, though.
no, every single where the rise of authoritarianism is increasing, the policy outcomes are skewing exactly in proportion towards the rich. Like this is not debatable, right? The level of the rise of authoritarianism is always in this modern iteration being led by or preceded by a lack of trust, and that lack of trust is because the policy outcomes are not matching what people want, and the reason why those policy outcomes are not matching what people want is because those elections and those policies are being bought. Who are they being bought by? It's not poor people, right?
Okay. Right. So now here's an interesting thought experiment. We all know, based on the facts that we're familiar with as good Yang Gang people, right, that if all the government did, and this is going to actually be a big admission on my part, Corey, so you're going to like the first part of this, not so much the second part.
Okay.
We all know that if the government were to just be hands off, no involvement in the economy, just let laissez-faire capitalism go where it's going to go, because of automation, right, labor will be less and less valuable. Wages will plummet, fewer people will get jobs, and the rich will get richer. Doesn't even have to be a conspiracy. It would happen naturally. Yeah. And if it were to happen naturally and the mob was going to rise up and kill everybody, I don't think it would be justified. I don't. I think that sometimes people need, you can't if for no other reason, you know how I keep going back to wealth is the solution to poverty, not the cause of it.
Yeah.
Right. So I actually did post a meme last night that said "Eat the poor." I did not make it my profile picture, which I thought about for half a second.
Of course he did. We're circling back to this though, because you literally embedded in your string. You made my argument.
Okay. Well, no, I mean, in a way, I actually think that we mostly agree. Where we disagree is about the benefits versus the downsides of populist rhetoric in that context.
Well, no, and I'm trying to understand the reason for it and putting the blame responsibly where it needs to be. And the reason why I think you actually agree with this is because we spent a lot of time covering Yang's policies, the minutia of Yang's policies. Right. And where I feel like we get the most animated, because the thing that we agree on the most, and if you listen to any of our podcasts, you'll understand this is the case. The rise of authoritarianism is the thing that we both see as impending doom, period. Right? Yeah. Like it's unspeakably bad. Historically, this happened before. This is why we keep, we stay on this so much. This is not a good thing, right? No, and the ways that
Bernie Sanders, as long as he is part of the conversation, is only making that problem worse.
Well, that not be the point. The point is this: Andrew Yang is actually focusing on the system, and whether it's democracy bucks or UBI or right? Yeah. Because that prime mover, the fulcrum around which we can have an effect on this, is the system that is failing those people that through ignorance and through being low information voters, however you want to call it, right? Right. That's the fertile ground that populism is growing out of. And we can't chop the tree of populism down. We have to make the ground different.
If your motivation is to solve problems and not to point blame at people, then you would arrive at Andrew Yang's platform. If your motivation is to get revenge on the evil rich people, you're going to want a federal job that makes everybody,
Which is weird that those two things are connected.
I know you guys are going to give me a little pushback on this, but I know so many people like this, Kyle. Okay.
Best caveat.
When he said we can't let people be Nazis, people like him most of the time would literally say that a neoliberal is a Nazi. Or so like Hillary Clinton is a Nazi. Obama is a Nazi. Okay. I'm a Nazi. You're a Nazi. Seth is a Nazi. Anybody who isn't a socialist is a Nazi. And So it really does. And Corey, you said yourself, or no, I'm sorry, it was Seth. Seth's like, are they going to think that I'm using my time productively, criticizing the policies that they like? Hell no, exactly. That's why authoritarianism is bad. I know that it isn't Sanders's goal to be, president for life. We do know that is Trump's goal. He's told us, and he's not joking. He's damn serious.
Yep.
So this is all comes with a huge caveat of, if Bernie Sanders is the nominee, I'm going to have no choice but to vote for him only because it's against Trump. But I'm going to hate every second of it, mostly because of Sanders' supporters like Kyle, who has said things to me that I think are absolutely disgusting.
Somehow we're in the same boat, right? Somehow. I never thought that would be the case, but after really coming to terms with this. Now, this, what you're saying right here, though, I've struggled to put this in words, especially when I'm speaking to people who are a little bit, like more on the authoritarian left side. When I'm trying to say, like, capitalism has helped us. It's not like capitalism. I think it's the virtue of the fact that cash is a non-biased third-party arbitrator between two human beings who might share different values. Meaning that wherever you have any kind of system in play, it's ultimately going to be like, how do we think people are behaving? How do we want to influence that behavior to achieve the goals that we desire? And the thing is that if you are just in a monetary system trying to survive on that system, you built your business, you've done this, that you've done that. Cash doesn't discriminate. It just doesn't discriminate.
Yes.
And that's the boon. That's what we have to acknowledge and recognize.
Well, and if you think about it, like, part of the reason that the true left, which neither of you guys are, according to my definition, okay, dislikes a UBI is because they think that there's something wrong with the idea that you need to have money in order to have, food and housing and stuff like that. They think you should just have those things. But if you think about it, means-tested welfare, which they pretend to care all kinds of about because they accuse Yang of supposedly having a Trojan horse to go after it, is literally just another way of requiring people to qualify and prove that they deserve those things.
Yeah.
And the federal jobs guarantee is literally requiring people to work in order to get welfare. It's workfare.
Yeah.
This is literally the true actual high up people, like people who are advising Sanders on the federal jobs guarantee policy, have publicly said in op-eds and whatnot that this would be a great way to reform welfare. Their idea is anybody who's on welfare, who's capable of working, should have to work. That's literally what it is. And if anybody other than Bernie Sanders were proposing it, these people would be calling it workfare because that's what it is.
I feel like this came out not of an ideological point of view, but on trying to defend it to Republicans, like Republicans from the 90s, right?
Sure.
Like, no, we're not just going to give them free money, but we're only going to give them free money and we're going to cut them off or whatever. Like, means testing is like an angry Republican idea, right? Like that, like from the 90s. Because now, I mean, they don't have a plan for anything except for sucking the Koch brothers' dicks.
Yeah.
Excuse my language.
And the Koch brothers are better than Trump, but absolutely.
So, like, one of the influential...
Oh, no, they are. Like, literally everything about the Republican Party was better before Trump's hostile takeover of it. But not that it was a perfect party, but Trump...
Yeah, no, I'm not saying, like, fundamentally better. It's not by much.
I mean, they're better in a lot of ways. I mean, for one thing, the Koch brothers actually refused to support Trump. They gave money to his opponents, and now they're actually even giving money to Democrats who support free trade because there are so few Republicans left who do, right?
Right.
So at least to their credit, they're supporting people who support policies they like, as opposed to just blindly going along with whatever the great leader of their party says, right? That's better. At least they are, they're putting...
they're spending millions of dollars to make sure that public transit...
Yeah, no, I'm not saying. Look, believe me, my wife has told me all about how the Koch brothers are horrible.
Okay. And again, I'm admitting they're better.
Like, in some ways, like I used to, when Trump first got elected, I used to say that I'm on the side of the establishment of both parties against the populist bases of both parties. That's how I used to say it. Until the Republican establishment said, meh, we'll just totally throw all of our conservative values out the window and do whatever this moron tells us to do because that's what our base wants. So now I no longer support the Republican establishment either. That party is totally garbage at this point.
Do you think that comes from... Sorry, Seth, you go ahead.
No. Like, because I'm going to totally go off on a tangent, so I don't want to interrupt that.
Okay, so I'll just finish this. I wanted to ask you, having been a Republican, do you think this happened because they played the evangelical card so hard that suddenly it makes sense that you can believe in one guy and believe in bullshit. Because I mean, honestly, like, not the evangelicals believe in made up stuff, but
Corey,
Wait,
you
who
missed
is that
something
question
huge. Oh, that was for you, but
Oh.
Corey didn't realize this because he wasn't following. We got God's endorsement last night. We got we got the evangelical vote. We did it. 6 million follower Twitter account. Yeah, we did it. We can pack it up. We don't have to do anything. 6 million follower tweet account. The tweet of God. You've probably seen some memes with him.
Yeah.
I have. No, God on Twitter is legit.
He endorsed Andrew Yang.
Oh, that's fucking awesome.
Blasphemy is a victimless crime.
All right, I'm so sorry. I had to get that in there right now. So
no, yes, you did. Yeah, of course you did.
To answer your question, of course that's why. Of course that's why. The problem is the Republican leadership got together and said, "Okay, you guys, we have a serious problem that we need to come up with a solution for." Okay, and the problem is this: 90% of Americans are lefties. So what are we going to do about that? And the solution they came up with was they said, "Well, a lot of working class white people are really sexist and racist and homophobic. So let's just pander to that and get them to vote for us." And that's what they did. And I'm one of the 10% who is on the right wing. And I was like, if that's the only way you can get it done, whatever.
I remember you were talking about that. Like, the Southern strategy was bad.
Because now their party is literally just the party of bigotry. And it doesn't even represent right-wing values anymore. It's literally just it's just a hate fest. It's so gross.
So
it's like the scorpion riding the snake thing across the river, and the snake bites the scorpion. The scorpion's like, "Why'd you do that?" Yeah. Anyway.
So really quickly before we get back to the
retelling
debate,
of that parable in history.
We are going to get back to the debate. But my "eat the poor" meme was, the fork and knife, which they often there's an "eat the rich" meme that shows the fork and knife turning into a hammer and sickle and says "eat the rich." It's very popular.
Are you serious?
I haven't seen it.
The hammer and
wow.
Yeah. Now, some of the people buying that are probably hipsters with trust funds who just think that makes them cool, and they're fucking idiots, right?
Wearing Shea shirts.
Really believe in that mentality. So what I posted was one that had the fork and the spoon, and then in front of it had the snake eating its own tail, right?
Mm-hmm.
And said "eat the poor." And the point being that when you think that the cause of poverty is wealth, right? Because you have a zero-sum view, and the reason people are poor is because other people are rich, okay? If you believe the cause of poverty is wealth, then you are going to cause more poverty in order to make sure that everybody is down at this low level. And whenever they have power, that's always what they do. Always. Everybody gets poorer. Always.
Yeah.
I'm going to take this opportunity real quick to go off on this tangent that I don't get to speak it about enough. And I like to use your podcast as a platform to do it. So forgive me. But, at the risk of giving myself just a massive head and coming across as a complete pompous, person with a messiah complex, I think
I love how this is starting. Just for the record, this is going very well.
Great.
Messiah complex.
Yeah, no, for real. And I think I'm gonna do.
On that.
I think I'm gonna do it in the weirdest way possible too. I'm gonna save the world. Hear me out. I have been driven to make this channel because, like I said earlier in the show, this is my first month that I'm somehow making a crowdfunded basic income, videotaping myself. I make about 2 videos a week. I have spent all of my time brewing kombucha, watching movies, playing video games. I read a lot because I love to read. I love to expand my knowledge as much as I can. And then I hang out with my girlfriend. I walk my dog. I go to the gym, right? I'm living a life outside of the workforce officially for a first month. Hopefully this wave, God, I hope this wave doesn't die down. But I did leave the workforce because of mental health reasons. I snapped. I was like, I'm not going to do this rat race. And so my life is tremendously better right now. My entire idea of how we fix this is that the problem that we're dealing with is essentially a as above, so below issue, meaning that the problems we're facing right now are reflections or magnifications or echoes of problems that we dealt with as we came out of the primordial soup, dealing with resource management as living organisms in small tribal cultures, trying to figure out who gets what, right? As humans are coming together and they are building small communities, the entire existence is based upon givers, takers. And that is all that our society, if you boil everything down and evaporate everything else, it is all about givers and takers and who deciding who gets what. It's resource allocation. That is the genetic makeup of the essential problems that we're talking about. And when I am able to try and say, listen, look at me, do you see something weird here? Do you see something weird in the ways in which technology has allowed me to essentially live outside of the workforce and yet still somehow be of value, quote unquote, to our system? Don't you think it's a little weird that I'm living the lifestyle that I am while a minimum wage job, the low, workers of our society are having to provide their values in the way that they are? That's going to shatter that entire illusion, and it makes the question of behavior control that we were talking about. Like, I think that if we can somehow, this is the craziest thing, we can somehow use Twitch streamers and video game players to change the world. If we can take that and somehow like just show it to people and say, look, it's right here, it's right under your nose, and you don't even see it.
And that's the answer to how the right wing can support Yang's vision. It's because if you recognize what I just said, which is that even left to its own devices, laissez-faire capitalism is going to result in a lot of people being unemployable very soon. Okay.
Most.
You know that the shit's gonna hit the fan. You know the pitchforks are coming, right? If you're not an idiot, Trump's an idiot. But he's also probably going to die of a heart attack before that happens, so he doesn't care. But anyway, you've got to do something. And a UBI is the most fair and pro-market solution to that problem. And if the Republican Party had half a brain, they would have embraced this policy 20 years ago, and they almost did.
Or 40.
Yeah. So, and like, to be clear, the welfare system that we have, which overtaxes the middle class and traps people in poverty because they have a welfare cliff where they can't afford to take a job because then they lose all the income, right? That system is the reason we don't have a UBI yet. It's the way that they have avoided the issue for this long, and it's not going to work. It's not going to work. You can't have a situation where a smaller and smaller percentage of the population is generating all the value, and then a huge percentage of the population is just living off of that largesse, right? That doesn't make sense. The UBI avoids that problem because it makes all of us contributors to the economy. And so there are a couple of things to forget, is that there's more than one way to contribute to the economy. Working, selling your time for money is just one of them. There's also investments, right? There's starting businesses. There's not working and raising kids, right? I mean, but not that long ago, only one parent worked most of the time, and our economy was booming. It went great. It's going great. You don't need to have literally every human being above the age of 18 working for an economy to be effective. There's other ways of doing it. Spending money in the economy is contributing to the economy. And when you give people money to save and invest and spend, that's going to stimulate local economies from the bottom up, not in a top-down authoritarian way, but a bottom-up libertarian way, and that will save our economy. It will do. So remember, wealth is the solution to poverty, not the cause of it. You give everybody passive income, that gives them the ability to be gainfully employed. If they choose to work, they have that extra passive income on top of whatever they're earning. And if a lot of people choose not to work, that's only going to increase the wages of the people who want to work because there will be less competition for labor, and that will increase their value. This is literally economics 101. It is totally the way to go.
Boom. Yeah. And the craziest thing is that right now, the main problem I'm having in getting this across is the fact that I'm now suddenly a class trader, that I've left the workforce.
What are you talking about? Are you serious?
Yes, this is what I'm coming against, and it has been so frustrating, and I've struggled to get a video out lately because it's happening so more and more and more, is that the left is saying that I am rejecting class consciousness by leaving the workforce. Because now I'm not about unionizing. What is unionizing going to do for me?
Honestly, you can have your lifestyle and still be like, no, unions are good.
Yeah,
they are.
And in fact, if everyone has $1,000, that's the point Rio was making right there, is that you're able to withdraw your labor. You're still able to unionize.
Right.
So, like, their entire point, they continue to say, no, landlords are just going to abuse this. It is like talking to a wall. And I have to tell you, when I was super energetic about Yang at the beginning of his candidacy, the last place I thought I would be is in this situation right now, in this conversation.
Yeah.
It is mind-boggling.
It's weird, man.
Corey, that's related. I'm sorry, that's related to our constant debate about what I mean by the socialist impulse.
And again,
but seriously, like literally go read like modern Marxist discourse, right?
I don't want to.
It's extremely influential in academia to this day, and it's
Yeah.
seeped into every field you could think of. It's infecting science. It's not good.
And you see my reaction every time this comes up. It's super weird.
Right, but let me be really clearly. They literally say that passive income is a bourgeois vice. The problem is the reason they say landlords are going to abuse it is because they are convinced, they are emotionally committed to the idea that, first of all landlords are rich, which is absurd. There are lots of middle-class landlords. Secondly, all rich people are evil. And what do evil people do? They constantly abuse their power, right? So they are committed to this idea. They don't believe that Americans can get along with each other. They don't want Yang's goal of raising the poor up into the middle class and growing the middle class because they think the middle class is evil, right? It's bourgeois. I'm serious.
And
that it literally is reducible.
Okay.
Their entire goal is equality of outcome. And
I'm deeply, deeply against that. I think that's a ridiculous.
You can't try and say, well, if you have equality of opportunity, you could still theoretically have an unequal system, right? My lifestyle.
No, you absolutely would.
Yeah.
Because I'm lazy as fuck, man.
Oh, yeah. Well, my lifestyle is now significantly better than I could have ever dreamed of it being a year ago. I love where I am, but I'm not living luxuriously. I've got a shitty car.
I lived in a bus in the Arctic for like 8 years while I learned how to play guitar. Also, very
badass. That's so cool.
Yeah.
You need to Kerouac that shit and make a book out of it.
Okay, here's the thing. Jack Kerouac is a fucking whiner. Like, let's just put that out. Like, listening to talk about suffering made me not a Buddhist. Like,
that's totally fair. But you could do the positive version where you're like, yeah, living out of the Arctic was amazing. I loved
it. Was, and I did, and it was fantastic. No, it was. Yeah, I could just edit the road and do it better. Okay, so I have a call of 3. I could do this for another 2 hours. I am really, really thankful to Seth for letting us share his platform. Seth, obviously we love, and honestly, like, this, like, we'll keep doing the wine cave thing, like, post debate, fuck the debates, but whatever, we'll keep doing it anyway, which is fun.
Can I just say, look at what this turned into without Andrew Yang. This is a very different conversation.
Right, well, and I'm not even sure we mentioned that Yang was trending like all night more than everybody else, right? I think you mentioned a little bit, but I think it bears repeating.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was trending more than everyone else.
I mean, I was putting out diligent tweets about, like, really cool, interesting things that, like, Klobuchar said, etc. It wasn't getting any traction on Twitter. I'm sure that's partially because of who follows me on Twitter, right? But the things that were getting traction were when I was talking about, like, boy, if Yang were on there, he would have said this.
Right.
One of the things Klobuchar said, before we wrap up totally, I want to give credit where credit is due. I think that Buttigieg and Klobuchar were the winners of the debate. Mostly because Warren and Sanders hurt each other with that bitter rivalry, and that's not good for their wing of the party, frankly, for them to be fighting with each other like that.
Yeah.
And Buttigieg and Klobuchar did not just say all the same things. They actually made interesting, novel points throughout the debate that they hadn't said before, which is not something that either Sanders or Warren did. But one thing Warren said that was really interesting, well, not interesting, I just thought it was a smart way to put it, which she said, if this was the impeachment question, right? She said, if the Senate doesn't call witnesses against Trump, they might as well give him a crown and a scepter. And I thought that was a beautiful statement because it's totally true. And it shows that she really appreciates and understands the values that a lot of Americans are clearly taking for granted. And it is the reason that our democracy is in danger right now. And buying into the idea that it's so bad that it couldn't possibly get any worse is a guaranteed way for that to become it's a guaranteed way to make sure it gets a lot worse, is what it is. So I actually tweeted out that quote with the hashtag no kings but us. I thought that was a good line. But yeah, no, clearly on Twitter, everybody was just, or at least my Twitter sphere, which is clearly selective, it was just mostly whining about the fact that Yang wasn't on there. Okay, after the debate, our good guy Van Jones said, I missed Yang.
Fucking Van Jones is solid.
He said this was disappointing. He said it was dispiriting. He said that the Democratic Party didn't show anything that was capable of beating Trump. I thought that was a very strong statement that Corey might not agree with. But he said, like, this party is going to lose if they keep going down this path. They showed nothing capable of beating Trump. It's a huge mistake that Yang wasn't on that stage. So I really appreciate the fact that he was there on CNN to say those things.
Yeah.
I wish they would have let him
there's something
moderate
to
it
that.
because he would have actually asked the questions.
This is the thing. Like, I think the people that are
For
getting
God's
to
sake,
moderate,
it doesn't even have to seem like you're biased. Just ask like, what's your solution to automation?
Yeah.
Right? Like that, like, and you know, automation is a thing. How are we going to deal with that? Okay, so I got 4 minutes. Few things I gotta get out here. Okay. Number one, everybody who is listening to us on YouTube, please come check us out at movingforwardpod.com. You can check us out on Anchor, or just look for Moving Forward, or any podcast thing that you do. Yeah, if you search for Moving Forward Rio or Moving Forward Corey, you'll get it. Moving Forward Rio works better because he's actually the more popular host. By one person, like that we know of for sure. But I wanted to ask you, Seth, I'm going to put you on the spot. Can you come on #coffee on Friday morning?
I believe I can. What time is that? Eastern time, correct?
10 a.m. Eastern.
10 a.m. Eastern time, the greatest time.
Yep.
I'll be there.
Yep.
Yeah. We need to try and see if I can get in. I'm going to try it on VR. So send me over your like server information. We'll do
okay,
that.
Okay, no, that's just the show. The normal show like this. So we're just going to be streaming from YouTube. Sunday morning, and I haven't told you about this, Rio. I might have built a cathedral to reason.
What?
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So Sunday morning.
What is that?
Sunday morning. So you know Bob Benson, right? Yeah. I'll take you guys through that. Like this all happened really with. So Greg and I have been talking about getting into Minecraft and doing interviews in Minecraft, just because the whole gamification thing. Chet keeps screaming about it, just to try it out. Right? We were thinking about doing it in Fortnite, but trying to have an interview while 7-year-olds murder us in the face over and over and over and over and over again because we're really bad at it didn't seem like a good idea. So we're in Minecraft and we're kind of toying around. So we invite Bob Benson into the server, and he comes in. And he's seen the goals and gratitude thing that I've done, and he does his own mindfulness practice. So he goes in there and he makes this pillar of wood, and he puts a sign on it and says, "This is a shrine to gratitude." I was like, that's fucking brilliant. So I made a few more, right? And it turned into this little park. And then it might have turned into a giant cathedral. And it's going to be all about science and reason and secularism. Anyone is welcome to come. But I have been jealous of the fact that church people get together every Sunday morning. So now, you know, anybody who wants to, we've got 4 spots left actually in Minecraft. You can actually come on the server with us Sunday morning at 10, but we're going to be streaming it live as well. There is going to be a secular sermon. And it just is a thing that we're going to do. We're going to do this weekly practice of gratitude, because honestly, the science behind gratitude is intense.
People like Daniel Dennett, who really understand memetics and the importance of viral ideas and the way people look at the world. Have been saying for a long time, but we need like a secular alternative to religion. The fact that it's missing from our culture is part of the reason that people are are treating their political ideologies or even just the political candidates they like it's their faith, right?
Yep.
It's not healthy. Politics shouldn't define your worldview to that extent. It's just one thing that we do in a democracy. Sam Harris said something really beautiful about why he finds Trump so horrible. And he said, like, you know, I think of living in a free society to me is when you can go, you know, weeks at a time without thinking about your leader. And there's this like oppressive, even whether you support Trump or not, he makes sure that whatever he's thinking about, whatever he cares about is the center of every conversation all the time. And it's oppressive by itself. It really is unhealthy. We need to get some competent people like Andrew Yang in the White House so that we can all go back to doing things that are nicer, like hanging out with like our grandkids or our wives.
This is a science link. For many Americans, talking about the news has become synonymous with talking about President Trump. According to new research, the participants tended to express a high level of emotionality tended to express a high level, with the news. Many also reported feeling overwhelmed, anxious, or angry.
Yeah, I know a lot of really smart people who are the kinds of people who traditionally would like read The Economist magazine cover to cover every week, right? Because it's very important to them to be informed about what's going on in the world. And that would just be one of many things they read. Like we're talking about people who really take pride in being informed. They're doing brownouts or blackouts even because they just cannot psychologically handle what's happening in the news every day. It's not healthy. It's not good.
God, that actually makes a little bit of sense to me. You know, with like memory things, it's like if the only thing that is constantly on my mind all the time is this. All right.
That's why I had to start doing the sunrise.
Yeah.
Right, like that, and it's still on Facebook. Actually, this is total pandering. We need to get up to 1,000 likes so I can actually bring the sunrises onto mobile. Right now, I'm doing them on Facebook, not because I want to, but because it's the best option right now. But yeah, every morning I sit down and I've been doing the daily stoic things for like a little philosophy or whatever, but mostly it's just streaming the sunrise and not saying a fucking thing. Seriously, just because I need that stillness, right? And the main reason why I'm streaming it is because I need the accountability. Because otherwise I would find something busy to do that, wasn't taking care of my mental health, which, I found out this year is a thing you need to do. Otherwise it will destroy you.
100%.
All right. And Andrew Yang is our Seth. You want to say it?
He's my taco.
He's my taco too.
Yeah, he's my taco, which by definition means that he is all of our tacos.
You're right, comrade.
I just got a boner.
Yeah, I just imagined basically, that scene in The Lord of the Rings where they step forward and they're like they're stepping up and they're all putting their weapon down and they're joining. That's what I pictured. Like we're all like, yes, he's my taco. He is my taco. And the dwarf steps up and then the wizard is like, he's my taco.
I dig it. Guys, thank you so much for having me back on again. This has been a joy. 2 hours. Wow.
Yep, it was a good talk.
And yeah, we could have done more.
We even managed to talk about the debate for part of it.
Yeah, a little bit.
Way to drag us back ruthlessly over and over again. That was good. Solid work.
Without you, this would have been...
Yeah. No, for real.
Yeah.
But now, though.
Andrew Yang is our taco?
My taco.
There he is. Ending on a question mark is one of my favorite and probably least professional things. All right, thanks, guys.
Thank y'all.
Yeah, I have a call pursuant to somebody that wants to start doing something for moving forward. I'm gonna get some details on it, and then I'll call you about it. But it sounds cool. I wanted to surprise you with it, just in case it's like real and looks cool.
All right, sounds good.
So we'll keep you posted.
All right, sounds good, Corey.
Who's in?
Bye, you guys.
See you guys.
Talk soon. Oh, Corey, get this up right away though, because the debate, it's like just.
Oh yeah, timely and all that other shit.
Yeah, get on that, Corey.
Up at midnight tonight, so it's first thing tomorrow morning.
Yeah, I know. I should be able to get it done within the next half an hour. Okay.
Bye, guys.
Take it easy.
Bye.
All right, and I believe that my live stream is still going on. I wonder if there is any way I can get my face back on here. I don't know what you guys are seeing. Oh, it's all of this technical stuff. Well, we're just going to wrap this up quick because I know that y'all have been listening in for quite some time. Thank you so much for joining along with my live stream. I mentioned this a couple times during the episode, but I am now able to do this kind of as my thing without having to resort to some, Uber peer platform or begging my friends and family for a little bit of help. It means so much to me. It is also this weird, paradox of that I am not actually having unconditional cash transfer to me. I am still working in one way or another. I'm just able to do it in some way that doesn't make me literally rip my hair out. Trichotillomania and just constant anxiety disorders. So thank you. Really, all of this has been because of you. You have changed my life, and I am living a completely different year in 2020 than I did in 2019. I've got a little bit of time here. I do need to go and make sure that my girlfriend knows I'm still alive and spend a little time with her. But I want to take a look through some of these comments and just see what you guys are saying. That was a huge episode that we just did today. If anyone has left a super chat, I noticed that I got one super chat. I don't know which debate or which live stream it was, but I seem to have missed it. I am so sorry for that. I'm trying to figure out exactly where to look to see where they would have come through, but it would help me, see people who have something that they really want me to address or say. So let's see. See, it's hard. If I just start reading from the bottom, I'm going to be involved in conversations that I have no part of, and I do agree there should be more than 30 people here, but luckily we'll pick up a little bit more after it is gone. I do think that this was a very cerebral conversation. I think it put a lot of things into perspective that a lot of people might need to hear. I wish that a conversation like this could be something that would happen on the national debate stage. Could you imagine if that was what we watched instead of whatever it was that we saw last night? Ooh. And again, the subreddit that I was talking about was Political Compass memes. If you were interested in the liberal and conservative type conversations we were having earlier, I would recommend going and checking them out because it was a lot. It's a lot of fun. There's not a lot of animosity like there are in other political communities that you would find online. This was awesome. Do more collaborations like this and tweet about it in advance. Yeah, I tweeted a little bit earlier today, but it was really only, like a 4-hour notice. So I want to make sure that this is able to get into more people's hands. I may try and re-upload this. So if it's taken down, it's because I'm actually going to upload it. I noticed that gets a lot more views in the algorithm, but hopefully we can make this a little bit more frequent if I can have other people on the show, especially if my live stream audio quality has been taken up a notch. I won't feel so imperfect about trying to do live streams in the future. So I will update y'all on my channel, on my Twitter. Make sure that you're following me at Dividend Report if this is your first time here. That'll be a way that you'll be able to see a lot more of my thoughts. Be aware though that I do tend to go into tweet spirals, into very unproductive conversations, and I can get a little bit neurotic. So apologies in advance, but I'm very glad that y'all enjoyed this conversation. Michael Moore warns that we're going to lose if we don't pick a candidate that is passionate. He's right. I mean, he wants Bernie, I want Yang, and I think it's correct. Yeah, I completely agree as well. The passionate choice seems to Bernie. I'm so interested in the numbers that Yang mentioned in his town hall where he did a PowerPoint. He mentioned that he is now the most favorable candidate out of everyone. He may not be the highest polling, but everyone seems to have a pretty good view of Yang. And if we think about the ways that the debate utterly failed to have any semblance meaningful meaningful conversation last night, I think that only bears well for people who have just been seeing Yang and his campaign on the ground in Iowa, who might be a little bit turned off right now, and they're thinking, why in the world was Yang not on that stage? And next thing you know, they're opening a browser, they're taking a look through and finding out more about Andrew Yang. We are throwing a Hail Mary pass. I wish that I had more concrete things to say about what we can expect next month. I don't want to give anyone any undue hope, but I do think that there is still a possibility that we can make something happen. This isn't the ideal place to be, I'll admit it, but we cannot give up hope. And if you're as enthusiastic about Yang as I am, I hope that you can continue to support him along with me. But don't put everything into this, because as we were just talking about at the end of this stream, it's not a healthy thing to do. You want to be sure to focus in on your mental health, and remember that the color green has been shown to improve your mental state of mind, and that's a scientific thing, not woo-woo. So go outside, spend a little time in the outdoors, surrounded by trees, chlorophyll, and all of those good things, and get your mind off of politics for a little bit. I know it feels like the stakes are dire, but you got to do what you got to do. And we can't move the country forward if we're all in a mental health crisis. And again, thank you so much, because y'all have lifted me out of my... Chet says, I'm sorry to hear that, Seth. This is antithetical to solidarity. I assume that was when I was talking about the ways in which I've been called a class traitor in the past, as I've talked about my own personal story. And yeah, I feel the same thing. It doesn't make a lot of sense, considering that it's not like I don't support collective action and bargaining and things of those natures. I just think that the flaws can potentially have some greater implications, and it's a little distressing to think a lot about. Resource allocation. The Zeitgeist movement champions a resource-based economy and an end to fractional reserve banking, a currency-based economic system. Yeah, I love Peter Joseph. That's his name. A really wonderful vision as well, and one that I think does, when it places it more on the aspect of resource allocation, you're starting to get more along, like you're correctly identifying the problem. I do think I remember watching it and seeing the ways in which, like, they put the importance on some of the certain structural planning and everything, and it was like, given the abundance that we have, we don't have to get so... I don't know. It still seemed to have a little bit more of that authority involved, where I'm not sure if there's a way that we can get through and continue to have people live their individualistic lives and still be able to make a society that's able to sustainably have happy people and a healthy planet in it together. Because again, if that guy shows up at my door, he could you guys might not have a problem with the way that I'm living my lifestyle. You might be happy to see me doing that, but I can guarantee you a lot of other people would not be. And I'll have to go back and see exactly what it was that I was talking about when you told me to write it up. Have you studied a resource-based economy? I've heard that the monetary system is a part of the problem. I do not understand it, but I like the idea. Have you any thoughts? Yeah, I think that was exactly kind of along the lines of what I was just talking about right there. And I think, yes, it's at least bringing the conversation and centering it around the right thing. That's good. Very good. So y'all, it has been just over 2 hours, and I have had a blast. Thank you for joining. Make sure that you are subscribed to my channel. You can hit a subscribe button. It should probably be somewhere along here on your screen, and there might be a little bell next to it, and you can hit that. It'll help YouTube notify you anytime that I make a new video or anytime I do a live stream like this. And I'm hoping to be able to get more content out in the future, but I do deal with some perfectionism that can stop me from getting things out on a regular basis. So keep that in mind. I look forward to the ways in which I can grow this channel, especially if things continue to go well and I don't have to re-enter the workforce, but I can, room new lighting and figure out ways to keep fresh and energizing. Hopefully help universal basic income and my vision for a future become a real thing. This has all been because of y'all. Thank you so much. Y'all have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday and a rest of your week. Enjoy this weekend. We've got a lot of stuff ahead of us. It's going to be something else. Let's go and secure that bag, y'all. Thanks again.